People in Marvel. My wife is the White Queen. Chapter 61 Strange Reward. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe. Close black lens bracket. No, it should be dedicated to Asgard. Only Asgard can make Hydra surrender willingly. Many leaders of Hydra are eager to restore the glory of Hydra in the past, and the god of Asgard is undoubtedly the best chance. Otherwise, without the support of a strong backer, Hydra may not exist for a long time. Even the current Hydra cannot compare with S.H.I.E.L.D., which has global state support. After listening to the female agent's introduction to Hydra, Hela shook her head in disappointment. The value of Hydra is much less than she imagined. Although Hydra still has many capable people who remain anonymous all over the world, as long as the high level dispatches them, they are also a force that cannot be underestimated. But don't forget who Hela is. God of Asgard. How big is God's vision? The power of the Hydra organization is really pitifully small in the eyes of 770, Hela. However, it cannot be said that it is worthless. After all, Hela does not have its own army on Earth, except for those mutants who are always watched by the government. Therefore, Hela suddenly understood that after mastering Hydra, it would definitely help Li Feng avoid many troubles. Thinking of this, Hela already had a plan in mind. She walked up to the female agent condescendingly, pressed her head with one hand, and said indifferently, "I accept Hydra's loyalty. You go back and tell the high-level people behind you. Let them come to see me with sincerity. If you dare to reveal my identity, my power will tear you into pieces." The words fell. A crystal-clear green light penetrated into the female agent's mind. She trembled all over, then nodded, turned and left without much nonsense. And Hela returned to her room, looked at the White Queen in the mirror, and said, "Emma, we have to do this." The White Queen in the mirror was silent for 2 seconds, and said, "But, if my husband finds out?" "It's okay." Hela shook her head with a smile and said, "He won't blame us. Besides, he will know the truth sooner or later, won't he?" White Queen bit her lip and nodded slightly. Accepting the loyalty of Hydra is nothing more than a trivial matter to Hela. If it wasn't for Li Feng, she wouldn't have looked down on Hydra, a mortal organization. Moreover, Hydra can also be regarded as a dark chess piece left on the earth, and it may be useful when it is not known. Li Feng, who was still busy on the set, had no idea that his wife had subdued S.H.I.E.L.D's old rival. Hydra after only going out for a while. And these are just the beginning for Asgard's goddess of death. Staying in the White Queen's body for this period of time, Hela's injuries have basically recovered. She knew that it would not be long before she could regain her divine body, and then return to Asgard to sit on the seat of the Nine Ghosts God Lord that should belong to her. As for Odin or something, she didn't give a damn. It's just that before returning to Asgard, she must first deal with the relationship with Li Feng. How to make Li Feng, an ordinary person, accept his identity and tell him to accept his past, this is what Hela is most worried about right now. The wives who get along day and night not only have 2 personalities, but one of them is also the goddess of death, the kind of goddess with countless blood on her hands. Whoever it is will be unacceptable, right? Why? Hela sighed. If this was the case in the end, it would be a big deal for her not to return to Asgard. She knew she was in love with Li Feng. If I can regain my divine body and appear in front of Li Feng again, will he fall in love with me and have sex with me? For the first time, Hela had such an idea in his heart. Now she really wants to have a child with Li Feng, so that the two will have a bond and an inseparable relationship. But the trouble is, because there are many laws in this universe, the more powerful life is, the more difficult it is to break through the genetic restriction and integrate with inferior genes. What Hela doesn't know is that Li Feng also has similar troubles. In Li Feng's mind, he had already vaguely doubted the existence of Hela. Li Feng didn't notice it at first, but as he got along constantly, Li Feng gradually realized that there seemed to be something wrong with his wife. Don't say anything else. When White Queen and him are lingering on the bed, there are often 2 different expressions. One is a particularly bold and unrestrained wild conquest. The other is a little bird who is at the mercy of others. These two reactions are completely different. Even Li Feng has begun to wonder if his wife really has a dual personality, as Nick Fury said. However, Li Feng only had doubts in his heart, and still couldn't directly confirm it. He loves her. So he didn't want to have doubts about the White Queen. With the death of Magneto, the refuge of Hydra, and the Hulk being recruited by S.H.I.E.L.D., the days gradually passed. And Li Feng also took advantage of this time to put Mission Impossible 4 inches on the screen. However, the rewards he got really made him a little speechless. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the pistol Zhang Mazi used in Let the Bullets Fly. Quote. After Li Feng heard this reward, his face twitched several times. The rewards offered by this system vary too much. When you are lucky, you can get a powerful force in the Marvel Universe. When you are unlucky, the pistol used by Zhang Mazi. What a mess. What do I need this thing for? Put it up at home. Or is it that Yinei City is a gangster? However, after having obtained the system for so long, Li Feng has almost figured out the urine nature of the system, and the ability to accept it in his heart has become much stronger. Anyway, his demand for rewards from the system is not particularly great. Recently, Li Feng's life has finally settled down. There are no more blind people coming to trouble him, and even S.H.I.E.L.D. has disappeared from his life. Li Feng naturally didn't know 4.9, S.H.I.E.L.D. chose to admit it after being warned by someone. Except for S.H.I.E.L.D., the mutant forces, even Hydra, etc., did not exceed their limits to continue to disturb the beautiful life of Li Feng and his wife. Now one is more honest than the other, and they dare not trouble them at all. Therefore, Li Feng found a free period and began to prepare for the filming and release of Breaking Bad. This is the first time he has entered the TV drama industry with his works, so the expectations and doubts about him on the internet have gradually become more and more enthusiastic. Many people even don't believe that Li Feng can make a good TV series. Li Feng didn't respond at all to this. Whether it is a mule or a horse, if you pull it out for a walk, you will know it. To avoid copyright disputes, the word made is added here. Readers and gentlemen, don't be offended. Ask for flowers, ask for collections, ask for everything. Chapter 62 Big Trouble comes. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe, close black lens bracket. Half a month later, director Li Feng's first TV series, Breaking Bad, was officially launched on the big screen, and his reputation among directors has been further improved because of this. Countless people have started to praise him, and countless people are expecting him to make more excellent movies. For this reason, the United States Film Association even specially set up an award called Most Outstanding Young Director Award for Li Feng, as well as a financial reward of nearly $1 million. This made Li Feng happy for a while, and he couldn't wait to go home and decided to share the good news with his wife. However, when he just returned to the living room, he found White Queen sitting on the sofa hugging his legs with reddish eyes. Click. Li Feng threw away the award portrait in his hand, rushed to White Queen, and asked with concern, "Honey, what's wrong? What happened?" The White Queen sniffled, burrowed into Li Feng's arms, and whispered, "Mutant School, something happened." What happened? Li Feng was stunned for a moment. Magneto was not killed by himself, what else could happen? He patted White Queen's back lightly, and asked softly, "What happened?" "Tell your husband." 07 As soon as the voice fell, the familiar news broadcast sound came from the ear. This is the official news platform of Sandy City, bringing you the first live broadcast. This morning, the famous mutant school was trampled down by a mysterious force. Among them, nearly 2,012 people were killed or injured, 824 were children under the age of 12, 542 were children who had just turned 16, and the remaining 646 were all youth under the age of 20. According to the FBI's positive response, this sudden disaster didn't just happen in Sandy City. Mutant schools in other countries were also seriously affected. Mutants' winter seems to be coming. Hearing this sentence, Li Feng's pupils shrank slightly. Really? Still early. The destruction of mutant actually happened without his knowledge. Moreover, The speed is too fast, there is no possibility of resistance at all. Recalling the life experience related to the White Queen, Li Feng sighed softly in her heart. No wonder her eyes are red, because mutant school is where she grew up, and it is also her kind. In the final analysis, no matter how indifferent White Queen is to the outside world, she is not an emotionless machine. The directness of this catastrophe led to the fact that none of the mutants survived, and no one would turn a blind eye to it. Just when Li Feng was about to comfort the White Queen, a crisp prompt sounded in his head. Ding! Congratulations to the host for triggering the side mission, saving the daughter of the Phoenix. Rewards can be obtained after completing the mission. Infinity Gauntlet. Excuse me, host, do you accept the mission immediately? Side missions. Save the daughter of the Phoenix. Reward or Infinity Gauntlet. Li Feng couldn't help frowning, his eyes gradually becoming serious. Finally. Ellipsis ellipsis ellipsis. Do you want to start? Bigger troubles are coming. Accept. Still do not accept. Li Feng hesitated. At the end of the day, this is just a side quest. If he gives up, there will be no consequences. But at this time, suddenly there was a slight sob in my ear. The White Queen's voice was quite hoarse, and she muttered to herself, "Husband, do you know? Professor Jin, Logan, Cyclops, these people used to be my friends." Li Feng's body shook, his eyes gradually became sharper. Accept. Ding. Congratulations to the host for successfully accepting the side mission. If the host completes the task within 3 days, the system will present an unknown reward X1. Li Feng didn't speak, he hugged the White Queen, walked into the bedroom, and comforted her softly until she fell asleep. In his eyes, White Queen will always be a child who needs to be taken good care of. So, he doesn't want to see her upset about anything. Sandy City, Mutant School. Here, it is deserted, without any vitality. Here, sparks are burning on the ground, and thick black smoke floats in the air. Everything that was originally built has disappeared cleanly, as if it has suffered terrible damage. In the entire Mutant School, there was no living figure. If you were a sharp-eyed person, you could even vaguely see the charcoal-burned corpse on the ground. When Li Feng landed here, the whole person became silent. He tried to find some familiar figures and the existence of other mutants, but found that this place seemed to have never existed, and everything was wiped clean. He finally realized that there is only one person who can cause such destruction. Phoenix, Jean Grey. According to the final plot of X-Men, Jean Grey is still alive in this world after killing all the mutants. Therefore, what Li Feng has to do now is to find her. Where will you be? Li Feng tried to use the Steppenwolf template to release that powerful spiritual power to spread throughout the Northern Hemisphere. Doing so is costly. But he has no choice. Fortunately, the God of Symbiosis template provided enough consumption. In the end, he discovered a strange aura fluctuation on the border of Mexico. 10 minutes later, Li Feng appeared in front of this wave. Unexpectedly, it was a little girl with delicate features, holding a dirty sandwich and chewing on it. Her whole body was in tatters. He recognized the little girl almost immediately. Laura, the second generation of Wolverine. Li Feng was extremely calm, squatting in front of the little girl in 307, and asked gently, "Tell me, what's your name?" Laura. Laura. The little girl looked at him timidly and said this sentence. Li Feng nodded slightly, took out a dozen banknotes, handed them to Laura, and said, "Come with me, I won't make you hungry again." Laura shook her head timidly, clenched the sandwich in her hand and stepped back. Li Feng frowned, and said again, "Don't worry, I'm not a bad person." Laura shook her head again. At the same time, she put on a vicious look, and iron claws like Wolverine's protruded from the back of her hand, which were extremely sharp. She roared in a low voice, "If you dare to come here again, I will kill you." Seeing this, Li Feng had no choice but to show helplessness. Just as he was about to make a forceful move, a man gasping and screaming came from behind him. ... Li Feng. You. Why are you here? Quote. Li Feng frowned, turned his head away, but saw a familiar face. Wolverine, Logan. However, Logan from at the moment looks like an old man in his 50s or 60s, dejected, gray on both sides, ill, and without any color on his face. Logan. Li Feng looked at him and asked in surprise, "What's wrong with you?" Logan had a sad face and a wine bottle in his hand. Apparently, he drank too much alcohol and was a little delirious. Chapter 63 The End of Mutant. Please subscribe, close black lens bracket. The small climax is coming soon. How will the death of Mutant make the plot develop? Please be patient and read on. Subscribe, ask for everything. Facing Li Feng's eyes, Logan said drunkenly after a long time. "It's a long story. I don't have any money on me. Can you take me to a bar? By the way, take the little girl behind you with you. We can't stay in the same place for a long time, we will be chased by them." Li Feng nodded slightly, grabbed the collars of the two of them, and disappeared in place in an instant. Soon, they appeared in a tavern dozens of kilometers away from Brother Dong. "Bring me 4 bottles of whiskey, 3 in tins, and I'll drink it on the road. Give me hands and feet." Logan stared drunkenly at the front of the bar and snapped. "There's 1 more bottle open now, and I'm going to entertain my guests." As he spoke, he looked at Li Feng. "It's great to see you, Mr. Li Feng. I hope they will save you." "Where are they? What happened to you?" Li Feng frowned and asked. "Tell me, Logan." Logan sighed. His face was full of decadence, and said, "Remember Apocalypse? After we left your house that day, we found out the whereabouts of Qin. She was caught by Apocalypse and put into a pyramids. It took a lot of effort to rescue her, but everyone, including Professor X, did not expect the application that happened next." Li Feng faintly sensed something, but did not interrupt. Jin's Phoenix Force erupted uncontrollably. Logan took a deep breath and said this in a trembling voice, with a look of rejoicing for the rest of his life, and said, "She lost her mind and slaughtered all mutant. No one in the whole country can stop her." Quote, "At one point we thought this was the layout of Apocalypse. But it's useless to worry about this now, isn't it? Everyone, they are all dead." There were tears in Logan's eyes, and the little Laura at the side saw it, stretched out her sleeve and wiped it for him. Apocalypse again. Li Feng's complexion turned completely cold, and there was a terrifying coercion all over his body, which made all the guests in the bar feel a chill. "Li Feng, calm down." Logan braced his body and said to Li Feng with a trembling voice, "Your aura is too terrifying." Li Feng took a deep breath and said calmly, "Why didn't Professor X stop Qin? Logically speaking, his mind control should be useful, right?" This. Logan shook his head in pain and said, "I don't know what happened. After we rescued Qin from the pyramids, her strength has completely surpassed all known mutants, and even broke through the Omega level limit. This caused Professor X to lose the ability to control Qin's thinking again. I can only watch her explode." "You mean?" Li Feng's eyes were slightly cold, and he asked, "Qin Gray gained great power in the pyramids. I think that pyramids should be the place where Apocalypse has been sleeping for 3,000 years. There must be something mysterious inside that awakened Qin's Phoenix Force." "Really?" Logan looked depressed, and didn't care about how Li Feng knew so much. He said in despair, "But we can't help it, can't we? All the mutants are almost dead, and they won't be resurrected. Where is Jean Grey?" Li Feng didn't explain too much to him, but just asked, "Tell me, how is she doing now?" "Have no idea." Logan shook his head, and said, "Since that battle broke out, she killed all the mutants, turned into a black phoenix and disappeared. Allow me to read your mind with psychic power." Li Feng hesitated for a moment, then asked the sick Logan. "It won't affect you." Logan nodded slightly, and put his forehead in front of Li Feng. Li Feng put his hand between his eyebrows, closed his eyes, and began to read all Logan's memories. Finally, he saw all the destruction of Mutant School. With a very painful expression, Jean Grey turned into a real dark phoenix, and the flames she exhaled killed all the mutants like killing cockroaches. None of them were spared. After that, she disappeared in front of Logan in a cloud of gunpowder. At this point, the screen is complete. Li Feng withdrew his hand and asked, "Why did she let you in?" Professor X exhausted all its strength, making Qin unable to sense our presence for a period of time, so we managed to escape. With a sad face, Logan explained, "But it also caused Professor X to age faster and become a 70-year-old man." Li Feng hummed and said, "Also, how did you become like this?" Adamantium had a backlash. Part of my lifespan was taken away, my body functions began to age, and I felt that I didn't have much time to live. With bitterness in his eyes, Logan drank the spirit in his hand and said, "To my shame, I can only stand by and do nothing about that matter." As he spoke, Logan, who looked old, had flushed eyes, overflowing with sadness. Laura, who was hiding beside him, saw this scene, stepped forward and patted his thigh as a comfort. "Cheer up, the old Wolverine wasn't such a fragile fellow." Li Feng's expression was calm, he knew that Wolverine might be killed, and said, "Where is Professor X? Take me to meet him." "I'm afraid it's too late now." Just as Li Feng finished speaking, there was a joking voice behind him. Then, a violent explosion sounded, bringing huge amounts of energy fluctuations. The entire bar was instantly flattened by the remaining waves, turning into a bare wasteland. The thick smoke gradually dissipated, and Ji Feng's body, Horse Zhao Ying, stood there intact. Logan and Laura's bodies were covered with a faint black light, and they were also unharmed. But the other guests in the bar were not so lucky, they were almost smashed to pieces. "Hey, it seems that the little cockroaches are quite tenacious, almost as good as my spittle." The joking voice came again, and the two figures approached slowly. One was wearing a red and black combat uniform, with two crossed short thorns on his back. One has a mechanical arm, the left eye has been transformed into a laser eye that shoots crimson, and he holds a thigh-thick light energy cannon in his hand. Obviously, the attack just now was made by this thing. "It's these two guys who have been chasing me and the professor." Logan's voice came from behind. "They have terrifying physical fitness and advanced technology. The guy in the red tights even has the same self-healing ability as me." Chapter 64 The Late Wolverine. Open black lens bracket. Please subscribe. Close black lens bracket. Li Feng was not surprised when he heard this, but set his eyes on the two guys in front of him. Deadpool, Cable. Shouldn't these two be enemies? How did you come together? Back to kill Logan and Professor X. Things are getting more and more complicated. Hey. You, a guy who looks like a monkey, has been staring at my bottom, are you interested in it? Deadpool twisted his head, spread his legs in front of Li Feng, and said, "Then I'll show you enough." However, as soon as he said these words, he felt an unprecedented coolness sweeping his whole body, making his legs go limp, and he knelt directly on the ground. Then, a pair of white and tender palms appeared on his neck. "If you dare to provoke me like before, I will break your neck." Li Feng stared at Deadpool coldly, and said word by word, "Believe me, my temper is not as good as before. Dian Suo, what are you doing standing there?" Deadpool didn't care, but tried to turn his head away, shouting at the Cable beside him. "This is an excellent opportunity to blow his head off for me." Cable hesitated for 2 seconds, but dropped the light energy cannon in his hand on the ground, stared at Li Feng and said, "We are not his opponent." "What did you 660 say?" Deadpool was taken aback, and when he wanted to say something to ridicule him, he found that Li Feng's finger was placed on his head at some point. Laugh. The terrifying mental power instantly invaded his brain, and almost all the brain cells hid together, trembling. Then, all the memories in his mind were red. "It really is you." Li Feng sneered, and understood the general idea in his heart. There's a familiar stamp on Deadpool's mind, too. That imprint was exactly the same as the one he had seen in the mind of Teacher X. Unsurprisingly, Cable also had it in his head. Afterwards, Li Feng had no hesitation, and erased the imprints in the minds of the two of them. Soon, Deadpool regained his senses, looked around in a daze, pointed at himself and said, "Who am I? Where am I? Am I in heaven or hell?" Deng Suo looked at himself incomprehensibly, with an unbelievable expression on his face. You are being controlled. Li Feng didn't explain much to them, but said, now, go home, go back to your own places. Deadpool scratched his head in confusion, looked at Li Feng and said, definitely, if you can tell me what happened, I will listen your words. I have no obligation to explain to you. Li Feng glanced at him lightly and said, now, either leave here, or die. After all, the breath in his body reappeared, the oppressive force descended out of thin air, and Deadpool and Cable could hardly breathe. The two quickly realized what kind of person was standing in front of them, and they didn't mean to continue to offend. Deadpool turned around quickly and muttered, I remember trying to protect a fat guy named Russell. Dian Suo gave a long hum, and said while backing up, I also remember that I seem to want to eliminate a damn fat man to rewrite the future, goodbye. So, these two guys fled away from Li Feng's sight like flying. Why are they all gone? Logan asked puzzledly. Did you use spiritual power? They are being controlled. Li Feng said coldly. If it's really what I think, this matter has a lot to do with me. Logan swallowed the question on hearing this. He could see that Li Feng was in a very bad mood right now, as if he was deliberately suppressing his anger. He is also very clear that once this emotion erupts completely, no one will be able to stop it. Take me to Professor X. Li Feng said. Logan nodded, turned his head to hug Laura, and said, don't be afraid, Li Feng is our friend, as long as he is around, we will be safe. Laura nodded reassuringly, looking at Li Feng with kindness in her eyes. Soon, under the leadership of Logan, the three came to a deserted nuclear radiation test site. This place was once used by the Army of the United States as a place to test nuclear weapons, so basically no one would come in casually, unless it was desperate. And in it, there are some waste materials worth using, as well as an abandoned hydroelectric power plant. Professor X lives there, and is still lying on the bed and sleeping, with a pale, hairless mutant sitting beside him. His name is Caliban, he is a member of the Mutant Wandering Team. He has the ability of other mutants within a 20-kilometer radius of perception, and he has taught himself the research of medicine. Logan pointed to the hunched guy in front of him, and said. At the time of the incident, he was on a mission in the far south, so he escaped the accident and specially prepared the sedatives and painkillers for the professor to sleep. Li Feng nodded to Caliban and said, your body seems to be very weak. It's a matter of radiation. Caliban was used to it, and said softly. The nuclear radiation here has a great impact on my body. Then you still want to come in and help? Li Feng asked with interest. Not even a mutant is completely immune to the effects of radiation, and your life is short. It doesn't matter, this place is safe, as long as I can calm down and do something. Caliban shook his head, walked to the wooden table beside him, and began to fiddle with some bottles and jars of pills and potions, ignoring Li Feng. He didn't ask Li Feng's name, it's not impolite, it's a message of hopelessness in life. The professor's mutant physique is gradually disappearing like mine, and his lifespan will also be taken away. Pointing to Professor X on the bed, Logan expressed sadness and said. So he often appears irritable with flashes of light. I have no choice but to let Caliban use drugs to stabilize him. I can feel that his vitality is running out. Li Feng said lightly. If you do this, you are actually harming him. The body's metabolism cannot excrete the side effects of the drug, which in turn accumulates toxicity and accelerates death. Logan could hear the accusation in Li Feng's words. He sighed, sat down on the edge of the bed, took a sip of wine, and said, I really have no choice, despair has taken away my fighting spirit. Is this the Wolverine in her twilight years? Li Feng sneered and said, it's only been less than half a month, and the blood is gone. I've become a complete waste, do I still have a chance? Logan said with a wry smile. Who said no? Li Feng raised his mouth, put his palm on top of Logan's head, and pressed it lightly. Chapter 65 Dangerous Signal Open Black Lens Bracket Please subscribe, close black lens bracket. There was an explosion in Logan's body, and intense white light emerged from his pupils, illuminating the entire space. he roared, startling Laura and Caliban nearby. Immediately afterwards, the aging on Logan faded rapidly. He recovered. With a piercing wolf howl, Logan's body underwent indescribable changes. His body abruptly grew to a height of 2 meters. At the same time, his upper body grew domineering and proud, hair like a snow wolf. Every inch of his muscles shone with silver light, and his entire face was extremely ferocious. Even his 10 fingers have turned into hard adamantium claws, with bursts of black aura enough to tear apart space. There is no doubt that this is a real Wolverine. Roar. Logan roared excitedly, baring his fangs. I feel my power coming back. I'm going to tear everything apart. Your fighting spirit is back. Li Feng withdrew his hand, looked at him blankly, and replied. Li Feng, I will never forget your kindness. Logan easily recovered and bowed down to Li Feng to express his gratitude. At this time, he simply regarded Li Feng as a godlike existence. Within the scope of his thinking and understanding, he has never seen or imagined an existence like Li Feng. One hand can fully restore the adamantium in his body. Even, let him evolve into a real Wolverine. Simply, terrifying. In fact, this is nothing more than Li Feng restoring the declining gene cells in his body through the gene rewriting ability of the god of symbiosis. Then go out and kill those people outside now. At this time, Li Feng raised his brows and sensed something. He raised his finger, waved to Logan, and said with a chill in his eyes. Logan froze for a moment. His keen sense of smell was triggered. He let out another roar, and rushed out of the area. Tens of seconds later, human screams and the sound of bullets hitting metal could be heard outside the door. Who are those people outside? Laura asked, tugging at the corner of Li Feng's clothes. It should be to hunt you down. Li Feng shrugged casually and said. They don't have the fluctuations of mutant, so they probably aren't the same as you. Probably those guys. Caliban spoke at this moment and said. Companies that specialize in researching the genes of X-Men may also be interested in your ability. I can crush a lot of these ants with one finger, so why worry about them? Li Feng shook his head disdainfully and said. Seeing Li Feng's answer, Caliban stopped talking and was busy making potions. Li Feng walked up to Professor X, put his hand on Professor X's brain again, and invaded with mental power. Surprisingly, Professor X's brain is different from other mutants. His brain has been completely exhausted, without any active cells. In other words, it is a complete vegetable. Fortunately, with the appearance of Li Feng. For him in this situation, the same can be done with the movement of fingers. Soon, Professor X's physical problems were completely cured by the black light that Li Feng waved, and he himself woke up. When meeting Li Feng, the immediate reaction was not strong. Perhaps it was because he had been sleeping for too long, but he still hadn't recovered from his senses, but excitement was still on his face. Woke up. Li Feng greeted with a nod and said. Your injuries have healed and you can move about freely. Hearing this, Professor X froze for a moment, then quickly sat up from the bed, moved his limbs excitedly. When he found out that his body had really healed, he almost burst into tears holding Li Feng. Thank you so much. Professor X wiped the corners of his eyes and said to Li Feng, fortunately you showed up, Li Feng. You're welcome, just treat it as my soft-hearted letting go of Apocalypse, and give you compensation. Li Feng waved his hand lightly and said. No one thought that such a thing would happen, and I was somewhat responsible for it. No, it's all my fault. Professor X said sadly. I didn't take good care of the piano, and that happened. Tell me the specific details. Li Feng asked, what happened to Qin? Actually, a few days before Qin disappeared, I had already discovered the change of Qin. Professor X sighed and explained, once, she actually asked me about some of your deeds, which made me I was very puzzled, but I still told her without hiding anything. As a result, she disappeared not long after, and the following things happened after that. 0. Seeking flowers. 0. Speaking of which, Professor X paused, apparently remembering something painful. Why don't you ask someone for help? SHIELD should give you some help. Li Feng asked. No, SHIELD can't get away from herself anymore. The professor shook his head repeatedly and said, "It's not that I haven't looked for him, but he told me that the president has been controlled by others and he is trying to figure out a way to deal with it, so he can't help me. In this case, it is impossible for him to joke with me. The president is also under control." Li Feng became even more worried. This is not good news. This is a signal, a danger signal. I'm going to take a step first. Find a safe place to wait for me. Li Feng said calmly and decisively, "No one will come to hurt you, don't worry." Professor X nodded. For some reason, he trusted Li Feng's words in the current headlines. "Take me along, I can sense where she is." Suddenly, Caliban from behind came over. He looked at Li Feng beggingly, and said, "No need." Li Feng shook his head lightly, and said, "Your sensory ability is nothing to me. My mental power can instantly cover the entire United States. It's not difficult to find someone." Hearing this, Caliban showed an unbelievable expression, but he didn't force it. He sighed and sat back in his seat. "However, I need you to do something." Li Feng suddenly pointed at Laura and said, "Take him, Logan, and the professor to find the remaining mutants around the world, and bring them back to the capital, where I will wait looking at you." After that, he raised his finger and pressed it on Caliban's shoulder. Immediately, a dense burst of black liquid climbed onto Caliban's body. The latter sucked in a breath of cold air, and the bones all over his body changed strangely, and the damage suffered by his body due to radiation disappeared completely. The symbiote god is at work again. Chapter 66 Break into the White House. Please subscribe. Close black lens bracket. Li Feng didn't stay any longer. He already knew that the guy who had escaped from him repeatedly was hiding there. Professor X, under the instruction of Li Feng, took the key figure Laura to leave the radiation land. Li Feng, on the other hand, quickly returned to the capital city. No different from ordinary life, the capital is still a peaceful scene of people coming and going, as if nothing happened. This is not surprising. SHIELD's method of hiding secrets is the top existence in the world, and the matter of mutants' destruction will definitely not affect here. Li Feng's terrifying mental power covered the entire capital all the time, and he soon discovered something that was not quite right. He sneered, but walked towards a well-known place. The United States, the White House. It is heavily guarded. Even the guards patrolling the gate are 8th level agents who have received special training from 600. They stopped Li Feng, who was standing at the door, and wanted to go inside. "What are you doing?" A guard saluted Li Feng, stretched out his hand, and said, "You don't seem to be from the United States, take out your passport and have a look." Li Feng ignored him, just glanced at him lightly, and continued walking forward. "Stop!" The guard yelled, stood in front of Li Feng, and said, "If you want to visit the White House, you must have a government approval order. Otherwise I will arrest you and put you in jail according to the laws of the United States. Get lost." Li Feng just uttered a word lightly. "Catch him." The guard's face darkened at that moment, and he ordered to several subordinates beside him. The guards responded one after another, took out the handcuffs from their bodies, and surrounded Li Feng. Li Feng put his hands in his pockets, looked at these guys, and just moved his eyes. Wow! Whoosh! All the guards who were close to him were turned into a pool of ashes in an instant and scattered in the wind. On the street outside the White House, all the passing tourists screamed in horror when they saw this scene. At the same time, the guards in the entire White House were in a mess. Among them, a black general named James Rodier was frowning tightly and giving orders. He was the officer dispatched to protect the president's safety, so when he saw this happening at the door, he immediately sent the order back to the headquarters. Warning! Warning! The White House is attacked by an unknown enemy. The life of the president is threatened. Please send the military to support. Repeat. Tens of seconds later, the White House entered a state of first-level alert. Li Feng listened to the sound of sirens coming from his ears, and the helicopters whistling overhead, surrounding him, and snorted coldly. He raised his palm, pointed it at the sky above him, and squeezed lightly with 5 fingers. Boom! In an instant, All the helicopters exploded and were squeezed into a piece of scrap iron. Together with the pilot inside, they turned into sparks. My God, this is a monster. Looking at this scene, James Rodier was so frightened that the walkie-talkie in his hand fell to the ground. Soon, he regained his composure, gritted his teeth, and yelled at his subordinates, "Quickly, take the president away, call the tank army over, and launch SHIELD's high-tech armor-piercing missiles, the target." The guy at the door. The subordinate next to him didn't have the slightest hesitation, took out a satellite phone from his body, and dialed it to the general of the military region. At this critical juncture involving the life and death of the president, disobedience to the order from above will result in a court-martial. The perimeter of the White House. Li Feng has already crossed the security gate at the entrance. The chaotic scene in the White House, as well as the orders of the Black General, were almost clearly seen by his powerful perception. He sneered, his heart full of disdain. A year has passed, and these guys in the White House still don't know what kind of strength they have. Should I say they are stupid, or stupid? Shish, 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 shish. 5 small positioning missiles made by vibranium descended on Li Feng's head with a destructive aura. Drip, drop, drop. The missile exploded loudly, bringing up thick black smoke, which almost enveloped the entire White House. However, it did not reach the White House. Because a translucent blue light curtain emerged on the surface of the White House, resisting all damage. This is also Wakanda's technology, which can be called the most perfect defense measure. James Rodier stands at the window of the White House, squinting in the direction of the small missile explosion. Ellipsis. The grassland and streets there have been turned into ruins, and even the surrounding buildings have been completely devastated by the bombing. Couldn't this level of attack kill you? James Rodier showed a relieved smile. Because, he didn't see that guy's figure from the thick smoke that gradually dissipated. Or, his body was blown away. Or, it was burned to a pool of ashes by the high temperature of thousands of degrees. No matter which one, it is the result that James is very happy to see. To dare to openly provoke the White House is to provoke the entire people of the United States. You, a mere human being, dare to oppose a country. That's not wishful thinking, what is it? Death is your only end. James smiled, thinking in his heart that after this incident, the president would definitely improve his position and bonus. That way, he has another huge amounts of money to squander, and what a wonderful life it is. Thinking of this, he picked up the walkie-talkie that fell on the ground, put it in front of his mouth, and said happily, "Report the president for me, this crisis has been resolved, the enemy has been wiped out, the loss is minimal, you can rest assured to hold the meeting." However, before he finished speaking, a powerful palm patted on his shoulder, causing him to tremble, as if being poured with cold water. The coolness swept his whole body, and he turned around mechanically. "You, 5.3 you. When he saw the figure behind him, his whole face instantly turned purple and blue, full of incredible. "What did you just say?" Li Feng, who was wearing a casual outfit, was standing behind him unscathed, and asked indifferently, "I didn't catch you, please say it again." How did you survive?" James Rodier looked like he had seen a ghost, and he couldn't speak fluently, then. "That's the high technology of S.H.I.E.L.D. Isn't it just a few missiles made of vibranium?" Li Feng sneered and said, "Even if you throw a few hundred more at me, it won't necessarily cause me any harm, idiot. It's impossible." James Rodier shook his head again and again, in disbelief. The S.H.I.E.L.D. director once said that no human being can resist this power. Chapter 67 Apocalypse. You let me down too much. Open black lens bracket. Please subscribe. Close black lens bracket. Li Feng smiled lightly, and under James's terrified eyes, raised his finger and swiped lightly. Admiral James Rodier has completely become a pool of corpses. Definitely, Li Feng graciously gave him a head. The expression on the head is wonderful. It was also Li Feng's act of showing mercy and keeping his hand. No one can stay in this world safe and sound after doing something to him. James still has a head left, which is much better than a tomb, right? Li Feng withdrew his hand, turned around, looked at the White House agents who surrounded him at some point behind him, and said lightly, "I give you two options. 1. Take the initiative to bring the guy in charge from the cellar, leave it to me. 2. I'll kill you, all of you, and then go find him yourself and choose one." The agents looked at each other, and all made the same action. He took out a black pistol from his pocket, aimed it at Li Feng's head, and pulled the trigger. They have no choice at all. 07. Hand over the president directly. That was even more unacceptable than being killed by Li Feng. Therefore, at the moment when the bullet flew out, all the agents in the entire White House suffered a response from invisible. Exploded and died. And there was no trace of blood left. It's like being part of the air. Become the fertilizer of the land. A bunch of idiots. Li Feng withdrew his eyes without the slightest emotion, sneered and pointed his hand at his feet, and grabbed it. Scoff. A big hole opened in the ground in an instant, and at the same time as smoke and dust billowed everywhere, a trembling guy in a black suit appeared in front of Li Feng's eyes. President of the United States, Twitter politician. "Sit, Mr. President." Li Feng smiled at him, pointed to the chair beside him, raised the corner of his mouth, and said, "Mr. President, do you know me?" "I know you." The President of the United States sneered, walked tremblingly to the chair, almost lost his footing, and said, "Mr. Li Feng. Great director in massa, I've seen all of your films. Very good." Li Feng leaned against the wall, turned to look at him, and said, "I thought you would say that you don't remember my name. Let me introduce myself. Ellipsis 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 ellipsis. How could it be? The President of the United States forced a smile, and said, "Mr. Li Feng's name is so famous, how could I forget it?" Ellipsis quote. Then you. Li Feng's eyes suddenly turned cold, and a huge murderous intent was released, descending on the head of the President of the United States, saying word by word, "How dare you offend me like this?" Immediately, the President of the United States felt as if he had fallen into an abyss, his complexion turned pale, and he was so frightened that he couldn't speak. Timidity, cowardice, is this the characteristic of you who have lived for 3,000 years? Li Feng sneered, walked slowly in front of him, put his finger on his head, and said, "It seems that you don't know, 3,000 years offend me twice, what is the end?" What did you say? The pupils of the President of the United States shrank suddenly. "I don't know what you want to say, don't mess around, I warn you. Tell me, what exactly do you want to do?" Li Feng squatted down, his pupils glowed scarlet, like a Mephisto in hell, piercing the heart of the President of the United States, and an incomparably dark pimple emerged from his 5 fingers. The spikes just penetrated into his brain. After waiting for 3,000 years and setting up such a big game, what on earth do you want to do? The latter couldn't resist this kind of gaze at all in his heart, and the murderous intent emanating from Li Feng's body almost made him breathless. Coupled with the terrifying pressure brought by the symbiote god's invasion of the brain, he could only explain word by word, "Swallow. Galactus. I. Obey. Galactus. Galactus." Li Feng frowned, his pupils shrank, and his murderous intent grew stronger. Now, things happened. The President of the United States said, after waking up from the pyramids, "I sold my soul to Galactus. He asked me to find a way to lead the mutant to control the entire Earth, for he creates chances, lets him. Speaking of this, the President of the United States paused, his face extremely painful. "Tell him what?" "Go ahead." Li Feng asked coldly. "Let him invade the Earth." The President of the United States said with despair in his eyes, "He want to infiltrate the entire Earth, and let everyone becomes a slave. Is this his only purpose?" Li Feng murmured with a gloomy face, "It turns out that Jean Grey is not controlled by you at all, but by Galactus. When he came to Earth, he brought a piece of news." The President of the United States suddenly laughed strangely, and said, if the people on Earth are unwilling to submit, he will use his own power to destroy the entire planet. Do you think you can stop it? Li Feng, Jia Jia Jia. Li Feng squinted his eyes, resisting the urge to take this guy's head off. It seems that the progress of the Marvel Universe is still accelerating, and it has exceeded my expectations. Even Galactus got involved with Apocalypse. Moreover, this guy's purpose is very obvious, to rule the Earth from the source first, and to subdue the Earth's creatures as his slaves. Assuming that the Earth is not willing to surrender, the Planet Destroyer, number 580 will not be put aside in vain. Judging from this point of time, the Avengers probably just completed their formation. On the other hand, Galactus is not only the god of world destruction, but also the killer of the planet. They can't resist it at all. Therefore, it is undoubtedly the best way for Apocalypse to control the President of the United States, the most influential political figure in the world. The high-level government officials have been infiltrated by your spiritual power, right? Li Feng asked, what are you going to do? Definitely destroy those aliens. A crazy look appeared on the face of the President of the United States, his eyes sparkled even more, and he said every word, only in this way can I follow Galactus, follow the planet killer, the planet's god of destruction. You must agree that what I did was the right choice, right? In the face of absolute strength, following is the best way, isn't it? You're right. Li Feng shrugged his shoulders and said with a smile, however, you must know that Galactus is not the most powerful existence in this universe. What, mean? The eyes of the President of the United States suddenly widened. Apocalypse, I think that the 3,000 years of precipitation have taught you to some extent what it means to have mountains beyond mountains and people beyond people. Li Feng put his hand on his forehead, sighed, and said, but you are too late. I'm disappointed. Chapter 68 Deprivation. The Power of Thor. Please subscribe, close black lens bracket. Next second. The entire presidential office has transformed into another scene. A land of corpses and blood. There was a strange red liquid flowing everywhere, and there was a huge amount of dark red star hanging above the head, and there were some monster-like roars and eating sounds from time to time. Here is a planet of the Hell Apocalypse star. There are nearly millions of Apocalypse planet creatures gathered here, and without exception, they all obey the orders of the Steppenwolf. When the President of the United States in a suit saw this scene, his complexion gradually became serious, and his figure also shone with blue light, gradually changing into the appearance of Apocalypse. Fear began to emerge in those blue eyes that had been settled for 3,000 years. He muttered to himself, I didn't expect. You are not from Earth. Can you tell me, what galaxy are you from? Li Feng sneered, and his words were full of undisguised killing intent. After living for 3,000 years, you should die too. The voice fell. The long river of blood flowing all around created a frightening storm, while wrapping Apocalypse's body inside, it also forcibly cut every inch of his muscle and skin. A mouthful of crimson blue blood sprayed out from Apocalypse's mouth. His internal organs were almost completely shattered, and his body seemed to have collapsed, slumping to the ground. Relying on the little activity brought by the remaining brain cells, he saw Li Feng's actions at the last second before he died. Li Feng looked at him expressionlessly, and there was a huge amounts of shadow standing behind him. The shadow this time was much clearer than the first time he had seen it. Apocalypse, which survived for 3,000 years, completely disappeared into the world. For this reason, Li Feng specially confirmed it with spiritual strength. Next, it's time to find Jean Grey. Li Feng put his hands in his pockets, and was about to leave the office, but he heard several piercing sounds of propellers turning in his ears, and then the entire White House was surrounded. The streets are full of tanks, armored forces and other military figures. Just now, what happened? A man in casual clothes broke into the heavily guarded White House alone, and killed all the agents in just 5 minutes, as well as a president in his second term. This kind of rebellious behavior will naturally attract the military. This is troublesome. Quote. Li Feng rubbed his eyebrows. Before doing it, he didn't think about it at all. Looking back now, it seems that he accidentally killed the President of the United States as well. Fortunately, the military blockade did not let the people outside see this scene, at least it will not spread throughout the country in a short time. The President of the United States represents the status of the entire United States in the world. Now that he is killed so easily, what face does the United States Army have? At this time, a tall figure in a black windbreaker walked into the office surrounded by the military. When he saw a pool of dazzling flesh and blood on the ground, his entire face darkened. Li Feng, you have gone too far. No one dares to kill the president under the surveillance of S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury glared at Li Feng and reprimanded. The moment he received the news, he brought people over immediately. But it was still a step too late. Moreover, he never thought that this person would be Li Feng. Apocalypse has controlled his body. Even if I don't kill him, he has no hope of surviving. Li Feng said casually. You may not believe it when you say it, but I'm not a liar. If I don't do that, the United States will be in a mess. Do you know who Apocalypse is? Nick Fury always had a gloomy face, locking Li Feng with an extremely sharp gaze. He was thinking about whether to let the army outside arrest Li Feng and bring him to court for trial. Although in this capitalist country, the president can be elected if he wants to. But it is extremely disgraceful for someone like Li Feng to break in and kill the President of the United States. It seems you don't know. Li Feng walked to the chair where the President of the United States sat and sat down, saying, he lived in the pyramids for 3,000 years. The most powerful mutant in the world. If S.H.I.E.L.D. uses the intelligence network, it should be able to find out. Nick Fury took a deep breath and said, he's already been slaughtered by you. It doesn't make sense for me to check him. I just want to find out, what are you doing all this for? Save the world. Li Feng said 4 words. But after saying these words, he couldn't help laughing in his heart. What a save the world. Nick Fury sneered, killing the President of the United States in front of so many officials, is that called saving the world? Li Feng glanced at him, and said calmly, Nick Fury, there are many horrors that you can't see in this universe, don't judge everything by your ignorance. Quote, I have to do other things. If you try to stop me, you will regret it. Really? Nick Fury snapped his fingers and said coldly, don't forget, I'm not facing you alone. The voice fell. A tall man in a red cloak walked in with a hammer in his hand. It was Thor. In our Asgard, killing the president is a capital offense. Thor raised the Mjolnir in his hand, shook it at Li Feng, and sneered in a contemptuous tone, you can't get out of here today, unless you kneel down and beg me for mercy. Since Li Feng's body had lost any breath, he looked like an ordinary person, so Thor didn't have any scruples. What's more, as a god of Asgard, there is really nothing to be afraid of on Earth. When Li Feng heard this, well, there was a playful expression on his face. He glanced at Mjolnir in Thor's hand, and said in a playful tone, Nick Fury, this is the ear of the whole card you blocked me from leaving. You should have seen him on TV. Nick Fury crossed his arms and said coldly, he is a god from an alien galaxy, and his power is much stronger than you imagined. You'd better cooperate with me obediently, and I don't want to make things so rigid. Really? Li Feng put away the playful look on his face, looked at Thor and said, do you believe it or not, I can deprive you of Thor's power right now. Thor frowned, tilted his head and hooked his fingers at Li Feng, and the moment his mouth curled up into a smile, his whole body was covered by lightning, and the blinding light made Nick Fury subconsciously take 2 steps back. Zzz. At the same time as the thunder flashes, Thor's eyes shine directly on the blue light, and Thor's power is fully applied to him. However, the next second. Chapter 69 finally found you. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe, close black lens bracket. Li Feng stretched out a finger towards him casually, and countless dense black lines climbed up Thor's palm holding Mjolnir, and gradually closed. I saw that within 2 seconds, Thor's power on Thor's body disappeared completely as if it had been drained. At the same time, the Mjolnir in his hand also flew into Li Feng's hand under the wrapping of those black lines. Thornton was stunned, as if he had seen a ghost. His mouth was wide open, his jaw was trembling, and he was so surprised that he couldn't speak. Because Li Feng from at the moment is holding Mjolnir, throwing it up and down, shop area. How is this possible? Thor was dumbfounded. Who else but the gods of Asgard can take up Mjolnir? Not only that, but even the power of Thor on him was completely stripped away. What is this? Return to you. Li Feng threw back the Mjolnir in his hand, put his hands in his pockets, and walked towards the door, and at the same time dropped a sentence. Remember, Nick Fury, I, Li Feng, want to leave, but I don't want to leave. People can stop it. Quote. After the words fell, Li Feng turned into a black shadow and disappeared. This guy. Thor took a few deep breaths, before he could hold back 700 words, and asked Nick Fury, is it a human or a ghost? Nick Fury always had a gloomy face and didn't speak. After a few seconds. Only then did he sigh, looking at the mess in front of him, his face gradually became serious. Thor, you go back first. I will have S.H.I.E.L.D. block the news completely. The death of the President of the United States is bound to cause an uproar, political turmoil. I will block the news for a short time, and then find a suitable reason to release it. As for Li Feng, it is estimated that no one on Earth is his opponent. Stay out of trouble for now. Thor heard this, touched his nose, and said nothing. But the look of horror in his eyes could not go away for a long time. At the moment, South Africa, a war-torn country. Women with black head curtains were lowering their heads tightly. Under the custody of a group of terrorists, they got into a truck and walked towards the boundless desert. They have to pass through here to accept the so-called holy death penalty. This is an act of swearing against the whole world. Although the method is extremely cruel, it is not uncommon. And among this group of people, there is a very familiar face. Her face is exquisite, and she looks coquettish. At the same time, her pupils seem to contain a sky full of stars, with fiery red particles one by one, extremely deep. She is Jean Grey, who disappeared after destroying the mutant country. All the women in the van were wrapped in headscarves that could not see their faces clearly. They lowered their heads tightly, did not communicate with anyone at all, and their bodies did not tremble at all, as if they were not afraid of what happened next. Hey, aren't you afraid? Chin whispered, and said to the women in front of her, see those long guns, they will blow your heads off in a moment. As soon as the voice fell, all the women in the van looked at her at the same time, and with pious eyes, they chanted at the same time, Satan hail. Satan hail. I want to ask you, can these guns kill the head of an Omega-level mutant? Chin asked again after a pause. However, this time no one answered her. Because, no one knows what the so-called Omega-level mutant is. They still have pious expressions. It's not like going to die at all, but like going to a party. At this moment, when the truck was driving, it suddenly braked suddenly, and, almost rolled over, in the middle of the desert. At the same time, several terrorists in the driver's seat of the car raised their guns and roared loudly, as if Ada was yelling at something. Then, a loud gunshot rang out, which was particularly piercing in this peaceful desert. What happened outside? Chin frowned. She just wanted to stand up and go out to have a look, but all the women grabbed her clothes and stopped her. Don't leave here, we haven't reached our destination yet. A woman's cold voice came, as if warning Chin something, said. Satan will punish you. You cannot go into his arms. Unexpectedly, Chin hesitated for a while, and finally sat back in her seat, closed her eyes, blocked all perceptions, and ignored the outside world. In this way, calm was restored in the car again. Outside the car, it was a horrible and bloody massacre. There was no scream, and all the terrorists who were with them were reduced to ashes, merging with the yellow sand of this place. The gunfire also gradually subsided, and the dust floating in the air seemed to have stopped at this moment. Outside the truck, a man in casual clothes put his fingers away expressionlessly, looked at the truck in front of him, and said softly, finally found you, Jean Grey. After all, he raised his eyes to the front of the truck, and the whole truck instantly fell apart, like a blooming flower, revealing the women in turbans inside. As a result, all the women screamed in horror as if they were frightened, looked at Li Feng, and made an incredible move. They took out a long gun from under their feet one after another, aimed at Li Feng's head, and pulled the trigger. Li Feng smiled grimly, his eyes were slightly cold, and he waved his hand at the flying bullets. Before even getting 5 meters in front of him, everything turned into dust. "Get out of the way." Li Feng looked indifferent, walked up to them, and said, "If you don't want to die." But no one understood what he said. Instead they all rushed towards Li Feng with a look of fearlessness. Li Feng shook his head helplessly, and jumped at them out of thin air. However, the expected death did not appear, and the front of these women was covered with a layer of fire, wrapping them in it. Li Feng didn't show a curious look, as if he had expected it long ago. He waved his hand casually, flicking away the women in front of him, revealing Qin, who was still sitting in the car unmoved. "Jean Grey, I have to say, you hid far enough." Li Feng raised the corner of his mouth and smiled. "If it weren't for the existence of you in Apocalypse's memory, no one in this world would be able to find you, yes." Hearing this, the latter slowly stood up from the car, and took off his hood, revealing his long dark hair and those extremely deep eyes. She looked indifferent, and said slowly, "It's you." Chapter 70 The Dark Phoenix appears. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe, close black lens bracket. Hearing this, Li Feng narrowed his eyes slightly, leaned towards her slowly, and asked, "You know me? I warn you, if you dare to take a step closer to me." Jean Grey's tone was cold, and before she finished speaking, she felt her chin lifted by a thin hand. "How about you?" Li Feng stared at her strange eyes and said, "Use your phoenix force to roast me into a kangaroo. Get your dirty hands off." Qin snorted coldly and said in extreme disgust, "What if I don't?" Li Feng was unmoved. Then, Jean let out a sneer and said, "Go to hell." After the last word fell, her body was instantly wrapped in black flames, turning into a huge black phoenix. She uttered a crisp phoenix cry, and aimed at Li Feng, spewed a mouthful of flames that could incinerate everything. In an instant, Li Feng's body was wrapped in black flames, not a single inch was spared. However, he didn't suffer any harm. Instead, he raised his hand in surprise, stroked the flames on his body with the liquefied cells of the symbiote god, and muttered, "It's really an evolved black phoenix force. It's more powerful than I imagined. It's much more coquettish." Quote. After all, he took a deep breath, inhaled all the flames on his body into his nasal cavity, and showed a comfortable expression, grinned, and said, "Jean Grey, I have to say, now you have with the power of the level universe, it's no wonder Galactus will be eyeing you, and you should be a perfect supplement for him." "What are you talking about? I don't understand at all." The voice of Dark Phoenix hovering in midair was crisp, but seemed so indifferent. "Qin, come back with me." Li Feng persuaded calmly, "You are Emma's friend, she misses you very much. I know that incident was not your intention, and Mutant will not blame you." "What does it have to do with you?" Dark Phoenix burst into flames again. His voice was crisp and cold. "I just want to kill those ants. What does it have to do with you?" "Jean Grey, I know what you're here for." Li Feng shook his head and said, "This place is a paradise for terrorists. The purpose of your coming here is to let them cut off your head, right? It's a pity that your phoenix body has the power of rebirth from blood. You will not die, never will. And, I wouldn't let them do that either. In that case, I will kill you." Dark Phoenix seemed to be enraged, let out a louder phoenix scream, and rushed towards Li Feng. Her body became several times bigger again, and the black flames filled the sky, almost occupied most of the desert, and the extremely destructive aura emanated out, which actually made the temperature of the sun rise by a few points. This is the complete Black Phoenix force. But, in Li Feng's view, there is nothing to be afraid of. Faced with this power enough to destroy a planet, Li Feng just gently raised his palm and swung it forward. A terrifying energy inspired from the ancient Apocalypse star instantly turned into a substantial scarlet light, blocking in front of him. In an instant, all the black flames seemed to have met their nemesis, and involuntarily hid back, unable to take a step forward. And the dark phoenix that Jean Grey turned into stagnated in midair because of this, as if it had been frozen. Qin, don't waste your time thinking. Li Feng still spoke gently and said. You can't control your power, so you can't hurt me. As long as you go back with me, I promise you, I will restore you to your true self, and you will no longer be controlled by the Phoenix Force. Death. Dark Phoenix was not interested in Li Feng's temptation. She released all her strength, got rid of Li Feng's control, and at the same time waved huge amounts of wings to directly wrap Li Feng inside with her body. This is something unexpected for the latter. No, you also absorbed all of the mutant's power. Feeling the heat coming from around him, Li Feng frowned, his eyes became a little more serious. This is a very threatening external force for you. If you can't master it, it will eventually destroy your body. I don't care. Dark Phoenix smiled contemptuously and roared into the sky. Boom. A terrifying flame rose into the sky, accompanied by bursts of mourning. Hearing this, Li Feng sighed. Do not blame me. He sighed sadly and closed his eyes gently. He opened his eyes suddenly. In the eyes, there are thousands of stars flashing, scarlet incomparably. And his body also turned into a stream of light at this moment, drilling into Dark Phoenix's body. 0. Seeking flowers. Here is a sea of fire formed by black flames. In the center of the sea of flames, sat a little girl with her arms around her knees. She looked about 12 or 13 years old. She lowered her head and covered her face sobbing, looking very pitiful. At this moment, a ray of light landed in front of the little girl, and squatted beside her. The streamer faded, and a boy who also looked like only a teenager appeared. He smiled, stroked the little girl's back gently and said in her ear, Are you okay? Hearing this, the little girl raised her head slightly, and glanced at the little boy with red eyes, but she didn't stop crying, and still buried her head in her legs. At the same time, the surrounding black flames suddenly disappeared, changing into another picture. On the green playground, cheerful little boys and girls gathered together, playing and playing with each other, looking very happy. In front of them, Qin, who was a child, ran towards the crowd with anticipation. However, as soon as she came in, all the children fled away with disgust and fear in their eyes. The originally cheerful playground has become deserted because of this. When the little girl saw this, Deng even lowered her head, her body trembled slightly, and the tears in the corners of her eyes fell on the ground drop by drop like rain, turning the grass into ashes. Then, the little girl gradually grew up and became a young girl of 17 or 18. But at this time, she still didn't have any friends. Instead, she was locked in the room for a long time by a professor in a wheelchair, and she rarely even saw the sun. In other words, it's for the safety of other mutants. She was very puzzled and sad, and constantly asked herself, why do some people always care about others, but no one cares about themselves? As a result, the picture flies away again, and the girl is like a ripe fruit, truly grown up. However, at this time, she had already changed into another character. She regards human life as nothing, and she doesn't care about the pain in the world. She let the dark side of her heart completely occupy the good side. She evolved into a dark phoenix, and slaughtered those who ignored her when she was a child. Chapter 71 Wake Up. Jean open black lens bracket please subscribe, close black lens bracket. Is this the violin of that world? The little boy, namely Li Feng, watched all the pictures. What is mentioned in the screen is the gradually growing Qin in X-Men. There is no Li Feng in that Qin world, nor is there a huge mutant country. The war between Magneto and Professor X lasted for many years, and finally because of the birth of Dark Phoenix, all mutants died. But this is not the fate you should have. Li Feng smiled, put his hand on the back of Qin's head and pressed it down slowly, and said softly, Wake up, Jane. Laugh. The endless black light spread, and the thick branches and leaves seemed to be peeling off cocoons, instantly replacing all the black flames in this space. Immediately afterwards, the little girl in front of Li Feng suddenly raised her head and let out bursts of heart-piercing screams. Under the cover of white light, it turned into 570, a dark phoenix the size of a palm file, circled around Li Feng, turned into grains of black dust, and bloomed into a moving flower in the air. After the coquettish Bana flower, it disappeared. And Li Feng turned into a stream of light again and left this pale space. After he left, crimson flames spread all over in an instant. The dark side derived from being rejected since childhood has completely disappeared. In the desert, the huge amounts of dark phoenix dissipated. The only one left was Jean Grey, who had turned back into red hair and slept with her eyes closed in the dust. Li Feng's figure slowly emerged. He squatted down, picked him up, and walked towards the United States thousands of miles away. And those women wearing turbans also turned into ashes one after another, rushing to meet the Satan they were talking about. 3 days later, somewhere in the hideout on the outskirts of the city of Massa. Under Li Feng's arrangement, Logan and Laura gathered the mutants scattered elsewhere and brought them to Marsa. For this reason, Li Feng bought a certain villa in the suburbs, where there is a very large wine cellar that can accommodate many mutants as habitats. Professor X and others also came to this place. Definitely, Li Feng used certain connections to evade the border inspection, and brought them into Massa City safely. Due to the large number of mutant deaths, the opposition in the United States is getting louder and louder. In response to the demands of the civilians, the government has tightened the control on mutant. Basically, as long as a mutant shows up on the street, it will either be caught by the police and thrown into a shelter, or it will be recognized by the citizens and shot in defense. This is also the general trend. Li Feng is not unhappy about this. He has done his best. At the moment, in some clean bedroom, Jean Grey rubbed her forehead and woke up from the bed. The moment she opened her eyes, she saw a familiar figure standing in front of her. "You finally woke up?" Li Feng asked softly. "Is there anything uncomfortable?" Qin shook her head slowly. A look of confusion flashed across her face, and she said, Why? I can't remember. You. Who are you? We met 3 days ago." Li Feng smiled at her. Jean Grey's charming face froze for a moment, as if remembering everything. The whole person became silent. Li Feng noticed this change, and calmly said, "No need to repent, you have just been used." "No." Qin shook her head, lowered her head and said, I killed everyone. No one will blame you." Li Feng said softly, "Want to meet your old friends? They are still alive and waiting for you." Hearing this, Qin Grey's beautiful eyes widened, and she nodded vigorously. "Follow me." Li Feng took her hand and walked out of the room. Logan, Caliban and others happened to be there, and they looked much better after returning from the border. At least in terms of food, drink, medicine and other supplies, they don't need to worry anymore. Logan at the moment, empowered by Li Feng, was standing in the empty courtyard, swinging adamantium steel claws vigorously. And the girl Laura standing beside him also imitated his movements in a decent manner, with a fierce expression on her face. However, this expression looks so immature. When Li Feng showed up with Qin, Logan was almost taken aback. "My God." Quote. Logan heaved a sigh of relief, but there was a little panic in his eyes. "Logan, long time no see." "Why?" Jean Grey greeted him with pale lips and trembling hands. You're really back, Jean?" Logan asked tentatively. "Logan, this violin is no longer the violin you saw." Li Feng said lightly. "The dark she has completely disappeared, and now she is the kind Qin, so you don't have to be on guard against her." Hearing Li Feng speak, the fear in Logan's eyes finally disappeared. He smiled at Qin and said, "Welcome home, Qin." Laura, who was listening quietly, threw herself into Qin's arms as if she had understood something. Qin's pale expression finally eased a lot, and she stroked Laura's forehead. "Go, I'll take you to meet the professor, he's still worried about you." Logan waved his hand, and the wolf claws were retracted instantly, leading Li Feng and others to the living room of the villa. Professor X at the moment was sitting by the bed, looking at the scenery outside the window, without saying a word. When Li Feng and others stepped into the room, he received the induction almost instantly and stood up from the chair. "Mr. Li Feng, you are here." Professor X nodded to Li Feng, and when he saw Chen beside the latter, his expression changed instantly. But the professor is always a professor, and he soon saw the clue. Tears flashed in his eyes, and he said kindly, "Chen, your complexion looks good." Chen was slightly taken aback, staring at Professor X's innocent eyes, nodded with emotion, and said, "Professor, long time no see." 5.2. Everyone had a tacit understanding and did not mention those sad things. "As long as you're fine." Professor X heaved a sigh of relief and smiled kindly. "You have to thank Mr. Li Feng. If it wasn't for her, we would never have found you." Jean Grey glanced at Li Feng beside her, and nodded slightly to him. "Professor." Li Feng smiled and asked, "As far as I know, those remaining mutants seem to be children around the same age as Laura." When Laura heard this, the corners of her mouth curled slightly, and she said aside, "Laura is not young." "Yes." Professor X sighed, and said, "They were arrested by the government's research institute for experiments, and they are all psychologically traumatized. If they are made homeless outside, they will definitely become another character. So, I can't give up such fresh blood." In the voice, Professor X did not blame Chen at all. Chapter 72 Recover. Mutants, please subscribe. Close black lens bracket. It's okay. You can stay here for a long time. I will provide food and various resources. Li Feng said without any objection, "But you can't stay here forever, can you?" "What do you mean?" Quote. Professor X looked at Li Feng puzzled. In the room, everyone focused their attention. "If I give you a chance to start all over again, can you run mutant school again?" Li Feng smiled and spoke surprisingly. Everyone in the room looked at each other at the moment. You looked at me, I looked at you, still didn't understand what Li Feng meant. Li Feng grinned and said, "What if I told you that I would resurrect all dead mutants of my kind?" As soon as these words came out, the air in the entire room seemed to freeze, and it became silent in an instant. What did you say?" Chen couldn't believe it. She held Li Feng's arm tightly and said, You can really revive them." Li Feng walked into Jean Grey's room, looked at her lying on the bed, and suddenly a clear reminder sounded in his head. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the side mission, Save the Daughter of Phoenix 07. Receive the reward, Infinity Gauntlet X1. In addition, the host will receive an additional unknown reward X1. Do you want to check the unknown reward immediately? This voice cleared Li Feng's mind a little. He wasn't really interested in the Infinity Gauntlet. Because anyway, it is just a carrier. What would infinite gems be used for without? Li Feng pondered for a few seconds. Since the system uses this as a reward, there is a reason for it, but he really doesn't need it now, so he didn't care about it. What really interested him was this unknown reward. Li Feng responded in his heart. After a second, ding! Congratulations to the host for getting Time Gem X1. Hearing this, Li Feng's pupils shrank suddenly. Time Gem. As soon as the system notification sounded, a gem emitting bright green light slowly appeared in Li Feng's Servant of the People. At this moment, he clearly felt that he held the power in his hands that could rewrite everything. These are real infinite gems indeed. Call. Li Feng suppressed the excitement in his heart and let out a long breath. Under the control of his thoughts, the time gem turned into a green light and penetrated into his forehead. Send infinite gems, don't take them for nothing. Facing everyone's shocked eyes, Li Feng shrugged his shoulders and said, This is actually not a difficult thing for me. Are you lying to me? Qin seemed to be frightened, and said quickly. Why lie to you? Li Feng rolled his eyes. When I was 3 years old. Like to tell lies. Mr. Li Feng, I assure you that as long as you can revive all the dead mutants, I will believe in you, worship you, and love you for the rest of my life. Professor X stood up from the chair and bowed heavily to Li Feng Bo and say, Charles will do what I say. Professor, don't get excited. Li Feng smiled at him and said, I don't need believers. Cough cough cough. Professor X coughed awkwardly and said, Sorry, I'm too excited. It's okay to resurrect them, but I will do one thing. Li Feng changed the subject and said, I want to make all the mutants forget the existence of Qin. Let everyone know her again and accept her. Do you understand what I mean? Logan and Professor X looked at each other and nodded, indicating that there is no problem. When Qin heard this, a touch of emotion flashed in his eyes, and his tense body relaxed. She knew that Li Feng's purpose in doing this was to let mutant know the real her again, instead of existing in the shadow of the past. She also knew that the Dark Phoenix in her memory was erased by this man. In the past, Qin had suffered countless ostracisms to create that dark her. I don't think you don't know this. Li Feng glanced at Professor X and asked. This. Professor X sighed with shame, and said, to be honest, even though I have a powerful brain wave control ability, I can't control the thoughts of these children. I don't blame you. Li Feng said, human nature is multifaceted, but evil is not. You're right. Professor X nodded seriously. Li Feng took a deep breath and said, are you ready? I'm going to start. There may be some unforeseen things going on here. But you don't need to panic. Everyone nodded heavily, their eyes strange. Li Feng closed his eyes gently, and under the mobilization of his thoughts, his whole body was enveloped by a faint green light. The breath in his body recovered bit by bit, which actually caused the whole villa to vibrate slightly. Professor X, Logan and others watched this unbelievable scene, and quickly supported the corner of the table to stabilize their figures. Then, they saw Li Feng's eyes suddenly opened, shooting out a dazzling green light, and went straight to the sky. Even the sun's rays, as if they were assassinating, were covered by this green light. The poor mutants buried under the red flames, and the dead innocents, resurrect me. Li Feng let out a low growl, and pressed his 5 fingers on the ground violently. Immediately, endless green rays of light radiated from his body, covering all the mutants in the villa. Professor X and Logan were almost overwhelmed by Li Feng's aura of handling. They were sweating profusely, their eyes were full of horror, and they looked at Li Feng as if they saw a god. Then, an incredible scene appeared. On the mutant land in Sandy City, which had long been in ruins, a human figure emerged from the ground out of thin air, like a growing grass, with its head raised and landlines everywhere. The destroyed buildings, as well as the charred corpses, were all restored to their original appearance under the effect of Time Gem. 10 minutes later, the green light slowly faded away. Li Feng's face turned a little pale, and a little cold sweat broke out on his forehead. This is the first time he has used the power of the Time Gem, and he is somewhat uncomfortable. But he knew that it worked. This is the official news broadcast room of Sandy City. Now brings you the first live report. Just 10 minutes ago, the mutant school that had become ruins was not only restored to its original state, even the dead mutants returned to their land alive and well. This is a scene that has never been seen in history. The Institute of Science has sent experts to investigate. Please pay attention to this station and provide you with the first-time reports. Chapter 73: A Visit from Asgard. Open black lens bracket. Please subscribe. Close black lens bracket. Inside the room, Professor X and others all wept with joy. They could hear the broadcast in the news clearly. They didn't know what method Li Feng used. But they understand that everything has happened and this is not a dream. Okay, I should go home. Li Feng stood up, stretched his waist, picked up the jacket at the side, put it on his shoulders, and said to everyone. If I'm not mistaken, the mutant school should be protected by the government next. You can leave at any time, but remember to close the door before you leave. As for the political thing, someone should come to me to solve it soon, and you don't have to worry about anything. Go and meet the kids, Charles. After saying that, Li Feng smiled at everyone, turned around and walked towards the door. Before he was about to leave the villa, Jean Grey caught up and stopped him. Li Feng, Emma, is she okay? Jean Grey finally remembered Li Feng's identity and asked, she knows you? No, she doesn't know. Li Feng glanced at the moon above his head and said with a smile, but I did this to keep you from being sad. So that's it. Jean Grey stroked her red hair and said, I'll see you off. Send me off. Li Feng opened the door of the Maserati, put one hand on the window, looked directly into Jean Grey's eyes, and said, "If you have anything to say, just say it, Jean." Next second, a wet lip was blocked. Under the moonlight, the two eyes intertwined, and after staring at each other for more than 10 seconds, Jean Grey blushed, pushed Li Feng away, turned and walked back to the villa. "Come fast, go fast." Li Feng looked strange, and wiped the corner of his mouth. He muttered to himself, "Damn, I was taken advantage of by a woman." After solving the mutant matter, Li Feng returned to the villa as usual. During these 3 days, he would go home very late, and the White Queen didn't blame him for it. Instead, he would wait until Li Feng came home every night before going to sleep. And Li Feng definitely didn't tell her what happened to Mutant, so he couldn't explain it. After all, things like time gems should not appear on Earth yet. "Honey, did you see the news?" Closing square bracket, quote. As soon as she sat down, the White Queen said with surprise on her face, "The mutant school has miraculously recovered. All the mutants are alive. Some powerful existence must have saved them." Li Feng put on a look of surprise on purpose, and responded to her with a smile. The two sat on the sofa together, discussing matters related to Mutant. Seeing the happy smile on the White Queen's face, Li Feng was also satisfied a lot. He knew that White Queen actually hated those mutant friends who had been with her day and night. So, he didn't want to see White Queen sad. Love is not only sweet, but also accompanied by all kinds of troubles. If these troubles are not dealt with, sooner or later they will become carrion that cannot be picked off. By the way, husband, I heard from the internet that you seem to have appeared near the White House recently. Are you going to discuss business? White Queen put a cherry in her mouth, and suddenly asked curiously. Li Feng was startled. He laughed and said, "What's the matter?" Asking this all of a sudden. He couldn't tell the White Queen that he was going to kill the President of the United States, could he? "It's nothing, just ask casually." The White Queen leaned her head on Li Feng's shoulder and said, "Did you know? The chairman of the Stark Group recently announced that he is Iron Man." Quote, "Oh." Li Feng pretended to be curious. "Iron Man? Is that the one in the red armor?" "Yes, you also know." White Queen smiled and said, "I remember you told me last time that you got Tony Stark's investment, right? After he announced that, he gave our family I sent a party invitation, and it seems that I want us to go to the Stark building to celebrate together. Do you want to go?" During this period of time, Tony has maintained a relatively close relationship with Li Feng, and the two are now considered good friends. Occasionally, there are some parties and the like. Tony will invite Li Feng to go with him. But Li Feng has no time to refuse most of the time. After all, he doesn't want to get involved with SHIELD people too much. "The crew still has a lot of films waiting for me to shoot. Apart from work and being with you, where is the leisure time to go to the party?" Li Feng smiled and hugged White Queen in his arms, and said, "Let's ignore that playboy up." Quote, "Listen to you." The White Queen smiled charmingly, looking a little cute. The next day, after the two had breakfast, Li Feng left the villa first. As for the White Queen, she walked to the bedroom, looked in the mirror, and said calmly, "Come out, I know you are here." As soon as the words fell, a queen wrapped in a noble and graceful coat walked out of the mirror. Mother of the 9 realms, wife of Odin, Frigg. Yes. Asgard has found where Hela is. This is because Hela's power is recovering day by day, and Heimdall has received the induction. It is not uncommon for Frigga to be found in the villa. "Hela, my daughter, how are you doing?" With a soft face, Frigg raised her hand to caress the White Queen's face. "You are not my mother." Looking at Frigg, Hela spoke coldly. Although the tone is a bit blunt, there is not much hostility. After all, no matter what, Frigga was also a man who watched her grow up. Moreover, as the mother of the 9 realms, Frigga has always been kind-hearted, and has pardoned countless strangers who might die in the battle of the God realm. If Odin had come here instead, Hela wouldn't have said a word at all. Maybe, he will directly move Wang Hao to fight. "Odin is your father, and I am your mother." Frigg took White Queen's hand, looked at her distressed,ly, and said, "My daughter, why are you not in your divine body, but in an immortal body? Is there any problem?" Hela is still indifferent, as if in front of her is not the relatives who raised her, but a stranger. "I like Emma very much, her personality is the same as mine, we share the same body, there is no any conflict." "Son, you have a good vision." Frigga still had a kind face on her face, and said to Hela, "Mother has never questioned your choice, but you should know that if you don't return to the divine body after your strength recovers, you will always be one. Is there any difference between mortals and gods?" Hela sneered, with disgust in his eyes. "I have fought for Asgard for tens of thousands of years, what have I gained? Dear mother, have you forgotten?" Chapter 74 Nick Fury and #039. S invitation open black lens bracket subscribe, close black lens bracket. "My daughter." Frigga sighed, stroked her hand, and said, "Your father never listened to me, so I secretly came to this planet to see you. Asgard already knows that you are in love with the mortals on Earth. Your father Odin is very angry about this matter. I am afraid he will come to you in a short time. You have to add more children." Hela's face became even colder upon hearing this, and the killing intent boiled even more in the room. She withdrew her hand and said coldly, "He's not my father, he's just a hypocritical bastard, a bastard who betrayed his promise and killed a donkey." Hela has come to this point, mostly thanks to Odin. When it comes to who Hela hates the most, it must be Odin. But Frigg's words still caught Hela's heart, knowing that Asgard has started to follow Ji-Fung now. This made Hela very headache. It's not that she doesn't know how arrogant the Asgard group is, and it's nothing to Asgard to kill a mortal. Although, Hela is an arrogant guy herself, but who made her really like Li-Fung? "Okay, my daughter." Frigga sighed, stood up, poured her into her arms, and said, "Mother is happy that you found someone you love, you have to be more careful, and live together." After finishing speaking, Frigga gave Hela some instructions, then got into the mirror and disappeared. This is just a duplication projected by Frigga on Heimdall, not by herself. Otherwise, it cannot be hidden from Odin. Asgard will not remain indifferent to Hela's affairs, that's for sure. In Asgard's view, the union of Hela and a mortal to form a family is an insult to the glory of Asgard. Odin, an old-fashioned and stubborn guy, wished he could eat Ji-Fung raw. But what exactly he will do, no one knows. After leaving the villa, Li-Fung received a call on the way. The call was from Tony Stark, but the voice on the other end was Nick Fury. He claimed that the president had been resurrected and wanted to have a chat with Li-Fung, hoping that he could come to the Stark building to meet him. Li-Fung hesitated for a while, but did not refuse. After all, no matter what, the President of the United States (AHCI) also killed himself. Although he was resurrected, S.H.I.E.L.D. did not announce it. It has to be said that Nick Fury has been around for so many years, and he is no worse than anyone else in judging the situation. If Nick Fury had directly asked the military to encircle Li-Fung after the death of the President of the United States, then this phone call and the subsequent meeting would not have happened. After several hours of driving on the highway, Li-Fung finally arrived at Tony's villa. By the time Li-Fung arrived, the party had already started. Seeing Tony surrounded by a group of supermodels, Li-Fung couldn't help shaking his head. This playboy is so rich that he is really chic. If Li-Fung didn't know the White Queen, he probably wouldn't be able to get out of the crowd of women right now. In addition to Tony, Li-Fung also saw some other acquaintances, all of whom had appeared in the movie. Such as War Machine, which is Tony's military friend. Another example is Tony's personal bodyguard, Harry. Even Li-Fung saw that Black Widow and Hawkeye, the two members of the original Avengers, were actually here. This made Li-Fung a little puzzled, but soon he was relieved. Estimated at this point in time, coupled with the impact of the mutant incident, the establishment of Avengers should have been successfully deployed. Even Li-Fung was originally in Nick Fury's plans. But with Li-Fung and Hela constantly showing their strength, Nick Fury has also cancelled this plan. I can't afford to provoke them, these two big guys really can't afford to provoke them. However, Nick Fury still did not give up. Today's party can be regarded as a test for Nick Fury. On the surface, when the President of the United States asked Li Feng to come over and ask for clarification, in fact it was to further build a good relationship with him. After all, Nick Fury had just ordered a group of soldiers to block Li Feng in front of the White House not long ago. Even if it is not good to tell Li Feng explicitly and invite Li Feng to join, it is not wrong to establish a good relationship with Li Feng first. What does it mean for a man who dared to break into the White House single-handedly, without even being afraid of Thor? Doesn't it mean that he is stronger than Thor? After somewhat guessing Nick Fury's thoughts, Li Feng didn't resist much. Don't look at the fact that S.H.I.E.L.D. is like a licking dog in front of him now, humble to the extreme. Once he has some crazy idea, the entire defense force of the United States will target him. However, this is also good. It is better to let S.H.I.E.L.D. be your own licking dog than to be S.H.I.E.L.D.'s licking dog yourself. Can be enemy or friend, naturally the latter is better. The arrival of Li Feng quickly became the center of the party. The supermodels and celebrities around who were invited to come here all came to toast with Li Feng. After all, he is already a semi-top existence in the director world. Tony warmly entertained Li Feng, and even started to introduce supermodels to Li Feng. Those supermodels also looked at Li Feng with bright eyes, just like a pack of wolves seeing a piece of fat. Li Feng's attractiveness is still great, with a handsome appearance and an explosive figure. Moreover, he is a top-level director who has been particularly hot and famous recently, and has a lot of influence around the world. Such a young hero is simply the perfect partner. If they can get the director's favor, they will definitely get countless benefits and resources, and maybe even become the heroine in a certain movie. For the thoughts of these supermodels, Li Feng has Thummim in his heart. The more elite the parties and gatherings, the scarcer the resources. These supermodels desperately want to get close to Tony, isn't it just to get the little resources that Tony donates? Unfortunately, Li Feng already has White Queen. No matter how beautiful these supermodels were, they didn't catch his eyes. Hey, Li Feng, is there anything you like? Tony came to Li Feng's side, and said to Li Feng in the tone of someone who has experienced it. No, I'm too tired today and I'm not in the mood. Li Feng smiled and did not explain too much. Not to mention the difference in aesthetics, the two even have very different personalities. Who is Tony? The rich second generation who grew up in the good environment provided by their parents, the standard playboy, neither lacking money nor lacking people, lingers in the flowers every day. Who is Li Feng? Nearly a year ago, he was still in the rented house, worrying about the daily life, contributing his life in the 996 company. Looking at Tony's posture, I'm afraid I wish I had 48 hours a day to waste and enjoy myself. Chapter 75 S.H.I.E.L.D. and #039. S olive branch open black lens bracket please subscribe, close black lens bracket. Chapter 75 S.H.I.E.L.D. and #039. S olive branch open black lens bracket please subscribe, close black lens bracket. But Li Feng is different. He cherishes the present time very much, and he doesn't want to waste time on people or things that are not particularly necessary. Definitely, it's not that Tony is the kind of person who doesn't want to improve himself. The current Tony is still very young. I'm afraid it will be a few years later, after experiencing a series of things, that Tony will change his metamorphosis mentality and become a qualified superhero. Tony at that time was the person Li Feng admired. Now Tony, at best, is just a kid who didn't grow up. Different personalities, different ideas. You shouldn't be so unfeeling. Do you see how sad those girls are? Tony put his arms around a charming woman, and said seductively, their skills in bed are much better than you imagined. Really? Then you should enjoy it. Li Feng patted his butt with a smile and said, I hope you won't be unable to walk tomorrow. After chatting with Tony for a few more words, Tony left quickly, turned around and plunged into the flowers, hugged a few supermodels and walked towards the corner where no one was around. For this, Li Feng is not envious, but feels that Tony is a bit naive. After Tony left, Li Feng wanted to look for Nick Fury, but he didn't see him at the party. And at this moment, Natasha Romanoff and Hawkeye found Li Feng and walked up together. How are you doing recently? A genius director. Natasha Romanoff smiled at Li Feng, with a hint of deep resentment hidden in her eyes. When this female agent who once planned to seduce Li Feng, at the moment, faced Li Feng again, she still felt a little unwilling. She couldn't figure out how could a man not like a goddess of her level. Li Feng is just such a person. Not bad, Natasha Romanoff, when do you plan to return to my company to work for me? Li Feng also joked with a smile, as long as there is no purpose, he does not refuse to talk to Natasha Romanoff. My agent say he misses you. You can't afford my salary. Natasha Romanoff covered her mouth with a light smile, pointed to Barton and said, let me introduce, this is our new member of S.H.I.E.L.D., Hawkeye, like me, is also a 10th level agent, he is very interested in you. Director Li Feng, you can call me Barton. Hawkeye stretched out his right hand to Li Feng quite familiarly. Nice to meet you. Li Feng didn't have any dislike for Hawkeye, he said hello, and they knew each other. Hawkeye is one of the veterans of Avengers and a high-level agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Most importantly, Hawkeye and Li Feng are really similar. Hawkeye also has a family, a lover, and even a child. Like Li Feng, Hawkeye is also very loyal to his family. After chatting with Hawkeye for a few words, Li Feng and Hawkeye had a good chat, and their friendship quickly developed. Hawkeye even invited Li Feng to have a chance to visit his home to enhance their relationship. Li Feng said no problem. Hawkeye and Natasha Romanoff turned and left. In fact, Li Feng's personality is really easygoing, and his coldness is only towards the enemy. For those Avengers members who want to make friends with him from a normal perspective, he will not be indifferent. Not long after, when Li Feng was going to go back, Nick Fury was late. Still wearing the black windbreaker, he nodded to Li Feng, motioning for him to come with him. The two took the elevator together and reached the top floor of the Stark building. Here, there is a very large bar counter and extremely soft sofas. On the table in front of the sofa was a familiar hammer. A guy in a cape, with a bottle of whiskey in his hand, collapsed on the sofa, talking drunkenly. Standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows next to him is a burly man in ordinary casual clothes. It is Captain America Steve Rogers. The name of Captain America was changed to his real name in the real world in the previous article. Please don't be angry, Audience Masters tilde. In addition, there was a familiar figure, which made Li Feng raise his eyebrows slightly. Dr. Banner. He is there. Moreover, he was wearing a white coat, and was concentrating on doing some experiments in front of the console that Tony Stark often operated. Come on, come here. Nick Fury snapped his fingers to the crowd and gathered them together in front of the sofa. This is the Li Feng I told you about. You've basically met each other. 0. Seeking flowers. Whether it's Rogers, or Banner, or Thor. Nick Fury said to everyone with a calm expression. Li Feng, you're really here, I thought they were just joking. Dr. Banner nodded to Li Feng with a smile, with obvious excitement on his face. Then, he took out a card, handed it to Li Feng, and said, I have to thank you for helping me back then. I haven't touched a cent of the money in this card. I'm now working for S.H.I.E.L.D. and I'm getting paid every month. Li Feng didn't push the bank card back, but put his hand into his pocket. He looked at Nick Fury. Tell me, what's the matter with calling me? The latter did not speak, but glanced at Captain America. Captain America walked up to Li Feng and sat down, poured him a glass of wine, and said seriously, Li Feng, we hope you join Avengers. This is an organization established to protect human safety. S.H.I.E.L.D. will be our backing. To show sincerity, you will be the captain of the Avengers. Otherwise, your life will go on as usual. Oh, really? Li Feng was not surprised by this as expected, and said calmly, sorry, I'm really not interested. Don't rush to refuse. Nick Fury took over the conversation and said, Li Feng, do you know that the incident of you killing the President of the United States in the White House has been recorded and even posted on the internet? If it wasn't for S.H.I.E.L.D., China's intelligence system is very powerful, intercepted these videos. To avoid revealing your identity, you will definitely be arrested now, worst case. already sent to the execution stand. Quote, "What do you want to say?" Li Feng narrowed his eyes. "You are powerful, it cannot be denied." Nick Fury shrugged his shoulders and said, "But you have to know, if you have the coat of shield, next time you make a move, you don't need to worry so much." Nick, I always think of you as a smart person, but you don't seem to think that I am a smart person." Li Feng sneered, looked straight into his eyes, and said, "Let me guess, the United has the president of the states been resurrected? That's why you invited me here, called so many people, and offered me an olive branch." Chapter 76 The Greatest Disaster in Prehistoric Times Strikes. Please subscribe, close black lens bracket. Nick Fury's eyes flickered for 2 seconds, and he nodded slightly. "Then you haven't thought about why that guy is resurrected?" After saying this, Li Feng stood up, patted his buttocks, and turned to leave. Nick Fury, Rogers and others looked at each other, and they all saw a strong sense of disbelief in each other's eyes. Rod Pole. Show. Just when Li Feng was about to walk to the elevator, Sun Zui's voice stopped him. Thor stood up from the sofa, took a deep breath, looked at Li Feng and said, "Why, can you hold Mjolnir? Tell me, why?" Li Feng looked back at him, shook his head with a smile, turned around and left without staying any longer. He knew that what happened in the White House that day was an unacceptable thing for Thor, who has always been strong. But he will not explain so many, 977, because it is not necessary. Damn it. Thor watched Li Feng leave and smashed the wine bottle in his hand, a little aggrieved. "Thor, calm down." Rogers gave him a look and said, "He's not a man to mess with." "I definitely know that he is not a man to mess with, he has sucked away more than half of my Thor power." Thor drunkenly said, "If Mjolnir is not still in my hands, I will never go back in my life. Asgard is gone. Since he doesn't want to join S.H.I.E.L.D., don't force him for now." Nick Fury sighed, his eyes deep, and, "If the President of the United States and those mutants, if it's all his resurrection, I think things will explode." Quote. Hearing this, everyone's eyes became heavy. Li Feng at the moment doesn't know that the Avengers, formed by S.H.I.E.L.D. has listed him as a character on the danger list. Although Nick Fury told everyone not to approach Li Feng casually, this did not prevent everyone from being on guard against him. In the end, Li Feng quickly left the party. In addition to meeting a few S.H.I.E.L.D. friends, he also has a windfall. "It was from Tony that I got an important message. Thor's main purpose of coming to Earth this time is to find his sister. That is, Hela, the legendary goddess of death, the first heir to Asgard." And Tony also kindly reminded Li Feng that the goddess named Hela is likely to be inside his wife Emma. This made Li Feng a little confused. How can this be? Li Feng thought in his heart, it always felt a little unreal. White Queen is very lucky to be his wife, how could Hela of Asgard be in her body? But if that's the case, everything seemed to make sense. Including White Queen's personality changes from time to time. Li Feng took a deep breath, not knowing whether he was lucky or unlucky. Assuming this is the truth, how do I face the White Queen? Same as before, get along day and night, as if nothing happened. Or a showdown with the White Queen. What kind of results these two choices will bring, he is not sure. Although Li Feng's heart is more inclined to the second, because he doesn't know why Hela is in the White Queen's body. But in the end, Li Feng pressed the idea. Since the White Queen has been with him for so long and hasn't taken the initiative to tell him about Hela's existence, there must be some kind of intention behind it. Li Feng knew that he didn't need to worry, because he clearly understood that the White Queen loved him deeply. He believes that White Queen will confess to himself sooner or later. But apart from these, what Li Feng also needs to consider is the follow-up troubles. Thor has already joined S.H.I.E.L.D. I believe it won't be long before the secret of Hela in the White Queen's body will reach Asgard's ears. Based on Li Feng's understanding of the plot of Thor, whether it is Odin or Thor is bound to have a grand war with Hela. So when the time comes, which side will Li Feng be on? Maybe, he's going to fight Asgard too. Although with Li Feng's current strength, there is no need to worry about these. Among all the people in Asgard, except for Odin, the main god who makes him a little afraid, the others are nothing in Li Fang's eyes. Therefore, Li Wei quickly adjusted his mentality. Anyway, White Queen is his wife, and Hela in her body has done some indescribable things to her. With such a heavy relationship, even if Hela were to lead thousands of troops back to Asgard, Li Feng would be a solid sword and shield behind her without any hesitation. Thinking about it this way, Li Feng suddenly realized that he was quite conscious. His wife led thousands of troops back to Asgard, and then he was conquered in bed. Hey. Li Feng stepped on the accelerator and quickly rushed towards his home in Massa City. Honey, I'm back. At the moment, the United States, Department of Defense, Military Space Agency. Here, it is an organization established by the Ministry of National Defense in cooperation with SHIELD Agent, which mainly conducts some military research on space meteorites, anomalies, and comets. At about 10 o'clock this evening, in the main control room of the Military Space Administration, several astronauts on duty stared blankly at the huge screen in front of them as if they had been immobilized. In the eyes of everyone, there is a strong sense of despair, as well as the bewilderment derived from the fear of giants. Among them, Paul, the deputy director, was also on the scene. Looking at the photo on the screen, Paul swallowed a mouthful of saliva, his eyes full of despair and death. Because, on the big screen in front of him, a huge amounts of black shadows are constantly approaching the Earth. He sat down on the ground, trembling all over. As Paul, who has studied astronautics for nearly half his life, he naturally understands what this black shadow means. This round black hole. And a black hole millions of times bigger than known black holes. It is not an exaggeration to call it the ultimate 4.6 celestial body in the universe. In other words, if this huge amount of black hole wants to swallow the Earth, it probably won't even take a second. Disaster is coming. It is a more terrifying disaster than the comet hitting the Earth hundreds of millions of years ago. Under the black hole, everything will be eaten up and completely disappeared in the universe. The United States, the White House, the office of the President. After the President of the United States was resurrected, part of the memory was taken away by the dead apocalypse. The rest of his life did not make him get rid of his habit of using Twitter to govern the country. At the moment, he was sitting in the office, taking the phone, kept swiping for messages. When encountering some interesting comments, President Kagwa will give them a thumbs up. Assuming that the object of the like is his supporter, he will press the reply button and type a few words. Chapter 77 Responses from all parties. Open black lens bracket. Please subscribe. Close black lens bracket. In his eyes, this is spiritual food. Just when the President of the United States was about to threaten those small countries to satisfy his desires through Twitter, the door of the room was suddenly pushed open by the Secretary of Defense. Hey, you should have knocked first. Did I let you in? The President of the United States turned off the phone screen while swearing. Sorry, Mr. President, something serious has happened. The Minister of Defense took out a tablet and put it on his desktop, and said in a deep voice, "The Military Aviation Department sent a video, I think you need to take a look." Ministry of Aviation. Is it the Ministry of Aviation again? The President of the United States said with a disdainful smile, "Not long ago, these guys sent me a document, saying that there are aliens coming from outside the Earth, and asked me to add it to them. Military expenditures to defend against future Star Wars. I think they have such naive ideas because they have watched too much Star Wars. The United States spends so much financial funds on the military every year. If we give these funds to those civilians and those capitalists, our country will become better and better. What do you think? Secretary of Defense. The President of the United States complained relentlessly. Yes, you are right. However, 07, I think you should watch the video first. The Minister of Defense said with a blank expression. Okay, isn't it just a video? Let me tell you, after I watch it, I will definitely not meet your requirements, sure and sure. The President of the United States picked up the tablet and pressed play. It's just that the more he looked, the more serious his face became. In the end, He shook his palm and the tablet fell directly to the ground. Quick! Notify SHIELD. This is the end. The United States is over. The whole world is over. Go. You bloody bastard. The President of the United States was going crazy. He couldn't believe what he saw. It's a pity that the cruel facts are in front of him, and he can't help but not believe it. A huge amounts of black hole is slowly approaching the Earth, and has passed the Sun. Calculated according to its traveling speed, in less than 2 days, the Earth will be completely drawn in by the gravity of this black hole, and will be ruthlessly swallowed. This is a more terrifying disaster than the Jurassic extinction 65 million years ago. Not just in the White House office, but Nick Fury, who was back in SHIELD, also got the news. Seeing the video and report sent by the military, Nick Fury also had cold sweat on his forehead. What is this? End of the world. At this moment, even if Nick Fury is the director of SHIELD, a man with countless experiences, at the moment is completely shocked. Those eyes that were usually full of determination were full of confusion and panic at the moment. He didn't know what to do, he didn't know how to deal with this crisis. The usual strategizing has now become a joke. He has never been in such a predicament. Although he formed the Avengers, they were no match for the black hole. This kind of celestial body is the most terrifying existence in the science known to mankind. What's more, its volume is still so large. Not to mention him, even all the life on the Earth combined, looks extremely small in front of the black hole. This is not an existence that human beings can fight against. At this time, a figure suddenly appeared in Nick Fury's mind. He ran into the office frantically, opened the safe, randomly dug out a key press, and held it in his hand. Kree, Captain Marvel. Currently on Earth, Nick Fury is the strongest existence known. At the same time, it is also his greatest trump card in life and his greatest confidence. Once used, there is no other chance. But now, he has no retreat or choice. Nick Fury hesitated for a long time, and finally used this keypad to send a message to Captain Marvel. Carol, you must come here. Asgard, the main hall. On the god's seat, Odin is closing his eyes and meditating, recalling his bravery in the battlefield in the past. At the moment, Heimdall walked in briskly. Your Majesty, something has happened. Heimdall's face was full of anxiety, which he rarely showed. What's the matter? Thor got into trouble again. No, it has nothing to do with Thor. Heimdall took a deep breath and replied. Galactus, one of the 5 gods, used his body and entered the galaxy. Based on his trajectory estimation, his purpose is very likely to be the planet where your son and your daughter are currently. Heimdall's insight is naturally not comparable to that of humans. He has the eyes of God, so he can see at a glance that the one that is constantly approaching the Earth is not a black hole at all, but a more terrifying existence. One of the 5 founding gods, the body of the devourer of the planet. A guy who disgusts all races in the universe, madman. For Galactus, his purpose of surviving in the universe is to devour those useless garbage planets in the universe. Galactus, didn't this guy get a warning from the OAA not long ago? How dare you use your body to walk wantonly in the universe? Odin also narrowed his eyes and frowned when he heard the news. This is no joke. Although Galactus ranks last among the 5 gods in the universe, he has existed in the universe for nearly hundreds of millions of years. For hundreds of millions of years, the planets it devoured provided countless nutrients for the growth of 603's body. As the god king of Asgard, Odin is well aware of the horrors of Galactus. Galactus in his prime, or rather, Galactus on the way to his meal, but even he had to take a break from the limelight. What's wrong with this Galactus that he has thoughts about the Earth? The Milky Way is the most mysterious galaxy in the universe. It must have been a long time since he sent his main body over so boldly. Heimdall. Odin raised the scepter, and shouted. Heimdall bowed his head slightly. Use your god's eyes to see if the cosmic celestial group has shown its face in the Milky Way. Your Majesty. Heimdall shook his head and said, I have already investigated before coming, and the cosmic celestial group has never appeared in the Milky Way since it appeared once 37 million years ago. Quote. Are they going to watch a civilization be eaten by Galactus? Odin narrowed his eyes, a look of concern added to his face. The most powerful organization in the universe, or the management group, is definitely none other than the Universe God Group. This organization, doing things everywhere, often uses the balance of the universe as an excuse to play the role of a cosmic policeman, exile those planets that do not abide by the rules and wantonly exploit the resources of the universe. But at the critical moment, why did the members of the Universe God Group disappear? Chapter 78 decided to make a move. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe, close black lens bracket. But when you think about it carefully, it's not surprising. After all, the relationship between the 5 great gods of the universe and the founder of the Universe God Group is not ordinary. In this case, the possibility of the celestial group finding trouble with Galactus is very small. Such a small planet as the Earth is nothing in the eyes of Odin. In the eyes of those cosmic gods who often wander in the universe, it will be destroyed as soon as it is destroyed. I am afraid it will not care much, right? Just when Odin was still debating whether to take the risk to stop Galactus, there were also people on the Earth looking out of the sky. Before the Himalayas, Mataj, Ancient One wearing the time gem around his neck, stood on the top of the mountain, looking at the sky above his head with serious eyes. As the Asgardian of the Earth and the defender of the dark forces, Ancient One has repelled countless dark beings who tried to take the Earth as their own in the past long years. But this time, here comes one of the 5 great gods of the universe. This is probably a more terrifying existence than Dormammu, the Lord of the Dark Dimension. Planet Devourer. This level of existence is an unattainable god for every creature on the Earth. In the eyes of Galactus, the people on Earth are not even ants. Thinking of this, Ancient One sighed again. The only way now is to try to use the power of Time Gem to stop this monster. In this way, there is still a chance to fight, otherwise we can only wait to die. Pole. Zhongshan. A figure suddenly appeared in Ancient One's mind. Can he stop this disaster? Yes. Ancient One thought of Li Feng. In the mirror space before, Ancient One has seen how powerful Li Feng is. Even she, the Sorcerer Supreme who has lived for hundreds of years, doesn't know where Li Feng's power comes from. The biggest possibility is that it does not belong to this planet. Perhaps. Does this man named Li Feng have a chance to compete against Galactus and become a key player in saving this disaster? Ancient One is not sure. She will not look for Li Feng because of this, let alone use the time gem to advance the future. She decided to wait. Wait for Li Feng to make his own choice. Or, wait for those who have the ability to save this disaster. If it comes to the most critical moment, if there is none, she will sacrifice herself through the time gem. In the villa in Massa, Li Feng took a deep breath after sending the White Queen out, and sat on the sofa. His face looked a little dignified. He did not expect that Galactus would descend upon the Milky Way so soon. Although Apocalypse died, he had a premonition that Galactus would come sooner or later. But too fast, still too fast. As early as when Galactus broke through the boundary wall of the Milky Way, Li Feng used the perception force of the Apocalypse star to discover the existence of Galactus. Should we make a move? Li Feng was thinking. It is estimated that Galactus will pass the Sun and envelop the Earth in a short time. If he does not act, there is no one else on this Earth who can save this disaster. Because as far as these superheroes on the Earth are concerned, there is obviously no existence that can confront Galactus. Iron Man. Even the Mark 34 has not yet been created. How to fight against it? Hulk. It is only now that I have begun to adapt to my own strength, and I don't know how far it is from the four-handed form. Thor. Still need to rely on the power of Mjolnir to stimulate his potential, let alone the awakening of Thor's power. Scarlet Witch. No one has appeared yet, who knows where it is now. As for Ancient One, Hela, and Captain Marvel, although the 3 of them are very powerful, they are definitely not Galactus opponents according to the current timeline. Because the Galactus coming to the Earth at this moment is not a duplication but the whole body. The ontology is enough to explain everything. After thinking about it, Li Feng found that the only person who could prevent this disaster was himself. In fact, the life and death of the people on Earth has no effect on him. But on this planet, there are still people you love and people you want to protect. If he lets the disaster come and ignores it, then everything he has now will be wiped out. This made Li Feng feel a little helpless. Heroes are forced out. He stood up, moved his bones, and his whole body was covered with a layer of black light. The power of the symbiote god made his stature expand several times. He decided to make a move. If this is not done, countless creatures will become the feast of Galactus. And his beloved White Queen also cannot escape this disaster. At this moment, the White Queen, who is taking care of her unconscious biological mother in the hospital, like most people on Earth, has no idea what Li Feng is going to do next, let alone the arrival of Galactus. She is not like Ancient One, who has the blessing of Time Gem, and she is not like Asgard, who has the God's Eye of Heimdall. In the absence of sufficient sources of information, Hela cannot spread her spiritual power to the Lord of the Universe. Definitely, if she returned to her divine body, she might be aware of it. But now she is only a soul body at best, and her strength has not yet returned to its prime. At most, through the Hydra organization, they know the news that a black hole is about to approach the Earth. This seemed like a trivial matter to Hela. Ordinary mortals would pee their pants in fright after learning about it. After all, in their eyes, a black hole is a mysterious and unsolvable disaster. But Hela knew that those powerful beings on the Earth would definitely not allow this kind of disaster to happen smoothly. Not to mention anything else, just Odin and Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One, two big men with the power of level Godfather, can easily solve it. What Hela cares more about is another thing. Odin's conspiracy. Through Frigga's arrival, Hela already knew that Asgard had found herself, and that Odin was planning to separate her and Li Feng. This is actually nothing. From the moment Hela entered the White Queen's body, she knew that such a day would come. This is the status of Asgard in the entire Nine Realms. Unless she hides in the Chaos Universe outside the Nine Realms, sooner or later she will be discovered by Heimdall, Zhao Dahao. Therefore, she had to worry about this, what dangerous move Odin would make in order to catch her. In the eyes of the current Hela, or the White Queen, although Li Feng is very capable in directing, he is still an unarmed, ordinary Earth human being. If he meets a powerful Lord God like Odin, he may not even survive for half a second. If you don't pass, you will be shattered by the divine power in his body. Moreover, she clearly knew that Odin was a main god with a strong sense of family honor, and he would never allow his descendants to marry those low-level Inhumans. Because in Odin's eyes, this is tarnishing the blood of the Lord of the Nine Realms. But so what? Hela never felt that falling in love with the Earthlings was a shameful thing. In the past 10,000 years, all her focus has been on the battlefield. In her eyes, the so-called love is an existence that is out of reach. But now, she can be said to have met the love of her life. It is Li Feng. Chapter 79 Fighting, Melting Open Black Lens Bracket. Please subscribe, Close Black Lens Bracket. If Odin dared to attack Li Feng, she would definitely use all her strength without hesitation and die with him. This is death in love. Hela has already placed Li Feng in a particularly important position in his heart. After all, where is Odin's strength? In the entire Nine Realms, almost no one can compete with him. To Li Feng, this is already beyond praise, not as a threat, but as a disaster. It is conceivable that if Odin really killed Li Feng in front of her, then she would definitely fall into madness just like the White Queen. A goddess of death who has lost her beloved will no longer be a pure goddess. Therefore, Hela at the moment pondered in White Queen's mind how to ensure Ji Feng's life safety as much as possible. Both had the same concerns about Li Feng. Definitely, the reason for this situation is mainly because they don't understand Li Feng's strength. If both the White Queen and Hela knew how powerful Li Feng is now, there would definitely be no confusion now. After all, the current Li Feng not only has the god of symbionts who can modify all genes, but also has such a powerful existence as the Steppenwolf template. Anyone deserves 300. At the moment, Following the warning issued by the military's aviation department, those high-level human beings who knew the truth have fallen into despair and dead silence. Their hearts were ashamed, and they gave up struggling directly. Yes. There is no need for any struggle. The so-called nuclear weapons have no effect at all in the face of a black hole of the level of Galactus. The more powerful the existence, the easier it is for people to fear. The militaries of various countries on the Earth have tacitly concealed this matter. They are not going to tell the truth to any civilians because that doesn't make any sense. Although some of them are more crazy offensive faction, proposed to launch nuclear bombs to cause damage to Galactus, but no one is willing to listen to it. The end of the Earth has really come. As S.H.I.E.L.D. director, Nick Fury did not give up struggling like most people. After notifying Captain Marvel, he summoned all the members of Avengers immediately, and tried to contact X-Men, Fantastic Four and others. Among them, Tony Stark, who was preparing to travel, drove to S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters immediately after receiving the news. As for the Fantastic Four, after they communicated with the military, they also chose to obey the orders of S.H.I.E.L.D. As for the X-Men led by Professor X, after returning to the mutant school, they hurried to the capital of the United States. They made up their minds to die. Because everyone feels that human beings are doomed this time. In front of the black hole, the superheroes who are still immature today have no resistance at all. But they don't want to give up. Li Feng naturally doesn't know these things, let alone most of the governments on the Earth. They have given up struggling. At the moment, he was constantly jumping in midair, reaching the atmosphere at an extremely terrifying ascent speed. Just a few more times, and he's easy enough to go into space. Although he doesn't have wings, the Steppenwolf template and the symbiote god can completely rewrite his genes to make him adapt to the environment in space. Moreover, every time he jumps, he can increase his speed by a notch, and even break through the supersonic speed. This was the result of Li Feng's deliberate control of his speed, otherwise he might burn his clothes if he went too fast. Even so, Li Feng broke away from the Earth's orbit in a very short period of time and officially entered the realm of outer space. Between the Sun and the Earth, a huge amounts of black vortex, like a huge amounts of pupil, is slowly moving forward in the solar system. If anyone on Earth sees this scene, they will understand that this black field is the biggest threat the Earth faces today, black hole. To be precise, it is one of the 5 gods, the planet devourer Abit body. At first glance, it makes people palpitate. After breaking through the atmosphere and entering the sky, Li Feng's whole body was covered with a layer of silvery white translucent armor, which looked like a venom in combat form. This is the full form of the symbiote god. As this Galactus itself. Li Feng took a deep breath. Just as he was about to approach this dauntingly huge star, a silver figure suddenly appeared in his field of vision, shuttling through the endless black space at a terrifying speed close to the 3rd cosmic speed. This is. Li Feng recognized the figure almost instantly. Who else can fly in space on a skateboard at will, except for that guy, the Silver Surfer? It's just that the Silver Surfer from at the moment, who was also one of Galactus' subordinates, became the perpetrator after his memory was wiped clean. At the moment, Silver Surfer set his eyes on the Earth, and also found Li Feng's figure. He frowned slightly, controlled the skateboard under his feet, and floated down. The two looked at each other without any extra communication. Silver Surfer recognized the armor covering Li Feng's body. How can there be symbionts on the Earth? The two sides are not like those sci-fi movies. You ask each other about the origin of each sentence, because this is the naked space, and sound waves cannot propagate at all. The two stared at each other for tens of seconds, and Silver Surfer seemed to sense something was wrong, and rushed towards Li Feng directly. And Li Feng, without any hesitation, directly used all the power of the Steppenwolf template. This time he went into space, not for fun, but to protect the one he loves. So there is no need to talk. Just start fighting directly, that is what should be done. The moment the two collided, a ray of terrifying energy burst out from the center of Silver Surfer's chest. This energy ray is the unique power bestowed upon him by Galactus. Not only can it easily penetrate any meteorite in the universe, but it can also instantly annihilate life forms with cells. Undoubtedly, if Li Feng didn't have the God of Symbiosis template, this ray could easily penetrate his body. The God of Symbiosis can not only rewrite genes, but also devour energy and assimilate energy. When the ray touched Li Feng's body, it was instantly melted away by the silver-white armor. When Silver Surfer saw this scene, not only his pupils were slightly closed. From the perspective of the division of forces in the universe, his strength can completely reach the level of Level Godfather, or even higher. Because Galactus was not stingy with his own power, and gave him the terrifying level universe power as a reward for his use. Although in the movie, the Silver Surfer and the Fantastic Four teamed up to kill Galactus, the price they paid was to die together. But no, that's not all the energy of Galactus. Chapter 80 Facing Galactus. Open black lens bracket. Please subscribe. Close black lens bracket. If one of the 5 gods in the universe was so easy to kill, then this universe would have ceased to exist long ago. Therefore, the strength of Silver Surfer at this time must not be underestimated. Ellipsis. He met Li Feng tilde such a pervert. Just a Steppenwolf template is enough to make Li Feng's strength reach an exaggerated level. After all, this is a real member of the new Protoss of the Apocalypse Star. In addition, there is also the template of the God of Symbiosis, and it is the strongest existence among all venoms. If this thing is used well, Li Feng can easily rewrite any gene to make himself stronger. For him, the limits in space were close to zero. Therefore, facing the cosmic ray emitted from Silver Surfer's chest, Li Feng didn't even dodge, and just ignored the ray. When the ray was swallowed by the God of Symbiosis, Li Feng not only was not hurt, but felt that his body was a little stronger. Then, Li Feng sneered, and under Silver Surfer's panicked look, he suddenly grabbed at the void. Whoosh! In an instant, a huge axe full of bloody smell seemed to be sent from the prehistoric, and it slashed straight down towards the Silver Surfer. This axe is powerful and heavy, and it contains all the strength areas of Ji Feng's entire province. Shout out! The axe blade slammed straight on the hard body of Silver Surfer, and even forcibly split his forehead into a crack visible to the naked eye. Instead of spraying out blood, countless silver particles spewed out from this crack. The Silver Surfer's body was like a kite that had come off its string, and with the rapid movement of the pedals under his feet, he fell into the vortex of the huge black hole not far away. Li Feng understood that it was Galactus' attack, but he didn't intend to pursue it. Instead, he looked at the axe in his hand with surprise. One axe, solved. The opponent is still a strong player at the level of Silver Surfer. This is also a case where Li Feng didn't make full use of the symbiote god to fully evolve. Because in theory, the God of Symbiosis can evolve constantly through contact with the outside world, and transfer this evolution to Li Feng. But in fact, if the God of Symbiosis wants to grow quickly, the best way is to fight against creatures with different genes, and then imitate their genes to expand his power. Only by fighting constantly, the symbiote's genes will become stronger and stronger, and Li Feng's genes will also become stronger every day. In this regard, Li Feng is obviously not qualified. Because of his temperament, he is doomed to be too lazy to fight to the death with any enemy. Or, I will beat you to death with one punch. Or, you beat me to death in a circle. This also caused Li Feng to be far from tapping the potential of the God of Symbiosis. But even so, Li Feng's current combat effectiveness is also exaggerated. When Silver Surfer hit him with that cosmic ray earlier, the God of Symbiosis obviously helped him a lot. The most direct performance is to convert that ray into energy and inject it into the giant axe in Li Feng's hand. This is also the key to Yin Surfer being killed by an axe in seconds. He couldn't resist his own strength. Next, it's your turn. Li Feng took a deep breath, and his body grew a bit, like a demon that emerged from the dark depths of the universe, with silvery white light shining all over his body. He let go of his perception, and moved towards the black hole not far away. Soon, he discovered that there were signs of life in this huge black hole. Li Feng didn't hesitate anymore, just jumped at full speed and plunged into the black hole. In the eyes of people on Earth, the so-called black hole is just the most terrifying celestial body in the universe, the intersection point of all physics, and the ultimate existence. Because this thing can not only absorb light sources, but even absorb all substances, it is not an exaggeration to call it a bottomless pit. But apparently the black hole incarnated by Galactus cannot kill the current Li Feng. As soon as he entered the border of the black hole, Li Feng felt a terrifying tearing force descending on every inch of flesh and blood on his body. This terrifying tearing force seemed to be trying to tear Li Feng's body apart, and even contained huge amounts of gravity, making it difficult for Li Feng to move even an inch. Before the time travel, Li Feng had read some descriptions related to black holes in books. According to the book, if a person is swallowed by a black hole, he will be pulled into an infinitely long thin thread. And this thin line can never touch the center of the black hole, because the flow of time inside the black hole is almost eternal. Regarding this point, Feng was noncommittal. 0. Seeking flowers, 0. But in this life, he has completely changed this view. Because at the moment, he can still move inside the black hole. This is because the god of Symbiont created a certain similarity between Li Feng and the environment in the black hole by combining the external environment and changing his genes the moment he entered the black hole, and he quickly adapted to it. Those tearing forces, those terrifying gravity, disappeared completely under the genetic modification of the symbiote god. The god of symbiosis template provided by Venom is so perverted. However, what Li Feng doesn't know is that the reason why he doesn't feel that time is frozen is entirely because of the time gem in his body, which takes him beyond the long river of time. He who owns the time gem cannot be affected by the distorted space of a black hole, so he can freely roam inside the black hole. In the Marvel Universe, transcending the long river of time is almost a standard configuration for every strong man. Changing time means changing everything. If you can't escape even the long river of time, you won't even be worthy of the title of strong man. So under the influence of the time gem, Li Feng easily released the perception and headed deeper into the Galactus body. He jumped a long distance, crossed the long gravitational belt of the black hole, went deep into the center of the black hole, and touched the singularity. The next moment, Li Feng found that the surrounding scenes had changed by a huge amount, and then there was a large passageway leading to nowhere in front of him. Li Feng paused for a moment, then rushed in. Here is another universe. 1. A small universe that exists only within the body of Galactus. And in this universe, Li Feng saw countless floating planets. At the same time, Li Feng also saw Galactus, one of the 5 great gods of the universe with hundreds of millions of ties connecting the world all over his body, whose body is even similar to that of Jupiter. Galactus. If Li Feng's prediction is correct, these planets should be planets that have been devoured by Galactus for countless years. The black hole is just the feeding tool of Galactus, and this universe is the stomach of Galactus and the real appearance of Galactus. All the planets eaten by Galactus will eventually be digested by Galactus here, and they will be used as nutrients and supplements day by day. Chapter 81 Surrender to me, Ants, please subscribe, close black lens bracket. In addition, above the body of Galactus in front, there is a bewitching blood-red planet, shining on the entire interior of the space, which is particularly strange, and even Li Feng feels a palpitation. At this time, the tens of millions of laces began to break free, and Galactus' body gradually approached Li Feng, as if he was sizing him up. Are you Galactus? Li Feng's eyes were cold. Although he saw this kind of scene for the first time, he didn't have much fear. Instead, he looked directly at the guy with no eyes and only a planet as his head, and said, "It seems that you are not what a shrinking turtle." In this universe, there are many creatures that cannot grasp the evolution process. Galactus said in a deep and hollow voice, "Obviously, the turtle you mentioned is also at the top of another level of evolution, but for the gods in the universe," he said, "it is just 8 small things in many evolutions, and the people on your planet are also like. They are all lower creatures." "Oh," Li Feng said with a sneer, "since people on Earth are inferior creatures in your eyes, why did you manipulate Apocalypse to let you infiltrate the government?" It seems that you also don't know what level of evolution you have reached, so you are confused about what the gods are doing. Galactus let out a deep laugh and said softly. So, the only difference between you and those lower creatures is that you are lucky and have acquired power independent of the evolutionary chain. Tens of thousands of years ago, I passed by the symbiosis body looking at the ball. Disgusting place. Luck. It's not luck. Li Feng sneered and said, using luck to eliminate unfavorable factors in the evolution process, your thinking is ridiculous. Inferior creatures, you cannot understand the process of evolution. Your thinking does not match the power you have and see. You are inside my body, but you still don't understand the truth of the universe. This is the drawback. Galactus said, leave, I'm not interested in taking the life of the bug, for me to crush you to death, I just need to move my mind. Soon I will come to your planet and feed my hunger that has been sleeping for 100 years. Quote, why not try it? Li Feng snorted coldly. He stopped hesitation, raised his fist, and gathered infinite power of destruction. Like a god, it appeared behind Galactus, aimed at his head, and the wolf army came out. Whoosh! The shadow of the fist went straight through Galactus' black and transparent body without causing any damage. But the planet behind him, because of Li Feng's aura, broke a crack visible to the naked eye. The majestic cosmic energy scattered in this space, causing ripples after waves. You ruined my food, lower creature. Galactus's tone was obviously a little more angry, and his figure swelled several times, covering Li Feng. If you beg me for mercy now, I can let you break away from the ranks of lower creatures, follow me, roam among the thousands of galaxies, devour, flourish. Really? Li Feng's eyes were icy cold, and he shot a divine light, and said, do you think you are qualified to define the level of living beings? Whether I am qualified or not is for the universe to decide. There was a hint of disappointment in Galactus' tone. Sure enough, trying to communicate with low-level creatures is a very difficult thing. I don't like your tone very much. Li Feng took a deep breath and said, I'm not here to chat with you. If you want to devour my home planet, you have to take a good look at whether you have this qualified. Are you threatening me? Galactus instantly became icy cold, and the crimson moon above his head actually burst because of this, and the aura like the awakening of a peerless beast permeated the entire planet. At the same time, a more terrifying tearing force swept through the entire interior of the black hole. Seeing this, Li Feng was quite surprised, and his eyes gradually became serious. Surrender to me, ants. Galactus sounded like a prehistoric day. Rumble. The curtain hanging from the sky fell from the sky, shocking people's hearts. A series of palpitating belts, like bright waterfalls, poured down from all around, blocking all of Li Feng's escape routes. Li Feng's face was shocked, and the god of symbiosis instantly rewritten his genes. From this moment on, he completely became a wasteland wolf born in the prehistoric universe. Straight down. In an instant. The stars in the entire black hole, surrounded by terrifying gravity, gathered towards the giant axe in Li Feng's hand. At the same time, Galactus' 5 fingers are like hooks, and a small black ball is suspended in his palm. Just looking at it from a distance makes one tremble all over. This is dark matter energy, which belongs to the most destructive element in the entire universe. It exists in the black hole. If an ordinary person touches a little bit, it will be torn into pieces and assimilated into a part. Generally speaking, after a planet collapses into a black hole, it will present a particle of dark energy with the same file size as a molecule. If you want to condense into a palm file-sized ball like Galactus, it is not difficult to imagine how many planets need to be destroyed to do it. And its destructiveness is naturally self-evident. The next moment, Galactus raised his right hand, flattened his palm, turned into a huge palm comparable to a galaxy, and patted Li Feng. Under these huge amounts of palms, countless planets were affected and turned into ashes. The power of the 5 gods can be imagined. In fact, the so-called universe is too fragile for existence of this level, and almost every 5 gods have the strength to easily destroy the universe. Facing the huge palm oppressed by Galactus, Li Feng directly and brazenly resisted. With a posture of punching the sky, he smashed towards the palm that was constantly pressing down. In this blow, Li Feng used all his strength to strike at the peak. But the ending is very cruel. The strength gap between Jifeng and Galactus is quite large. Under the palm of Galactus, it has suffered a lot, and some 4.1 are difficult to compete. But Li Feng wasn't depressed, instead he was excited inside. He can clearly feel that his evolution rate is greatly increasing, and his strength is rapidly becoming stronger. The god of symbiosis allowed him to quickly adapt to the strong pressure around him, and the genes in his body had gradually begun to adapt to the existence of Galactus, and even became more and more compatible. As long as he is given enough time, his genes will evolve again. At that time, Galactus will be the first to experience the horrors of the god of symbiotes. Just when Li Feng was desperately trying to stop Galactus, the superheroes on the Earth have gathered together, planning to make a last-ditch effort for mankind. Under the authorization of the military, Iron Man bound 2 nuclear bombs of the Little Boy level through the thrusters, intending to send them into space. Chapter 82 Forced to Retreat. Please subscribe. Close black lens bracket. The militaries of various countries are also getting ready one after another, and all the weapons accumulated over the years are going to be shown. Think of it as offering the most magnificent fireworks for the destruction of human civilization. At this time, even a group of idiots who didn't know anything could sense that something was wrong. Today's world is too quiet. From the perspective of the outside world, countries seem to have no reaction to the arrival of the huge black hole. However, just when everyone was ready to fight hard, a news suddenly came from the Military Aviation Bureau, which shocked everyone's jaws. The black hole stopped moving. When receiving this news, scientists from all over the world were at a loss. Even Nick Fury, the SHIELD director, was a little confused. The black hole can also be like a car. Step on the brakes. Don't ask, they haven't seen this scene before. How about we wait a little longer? Looking at the group of superheroes eager to fight, Nick Fury said strangely. "Oh 7, he has a glimmer of hope in his heart, maybe there will be a turning point." The other superheroes also looked at each other, and finally nodded silently. Otherwise, what else can we do? Do we really expect them to deal with this black hole? They don't want to court death, isn't it good to live? At the same time, in the universe of Galactus, the battle between Li Feng and Galactus continues. To be precise, it wasn't a fight, but Li Feng's unilateral beating. Galactus will become the shame of the 5 gods only when he is extremely weak. But now the Galactus that Li Feng is facing is not weak at all, and his fighting power is frighteningly strong. Smash a galaxy at random, and open your mouth to see magnificent cosmic rays. This combat power is really a bit outrageous. However, Li Feng's performance is even more outrageous. Facing the attack of Galactus, Jifeng at the beginning of the day is completely unable to resist. But as Li Feng died more and more times, his evolution rate became faster and faster. By now, it has been able to wrestle with Galactus head-on. With a boom, Li Feng hit Galactus again, and this time Li Feng knocked away the big hand that Galactus had slapped. For the first time, Galactus showed a look of pain on his expressionless and serious face. Although this painful color disappeared in a flash, it was still captured by Li Feng. "You are very powerful, symbiote creature, no wonder you dare to challenge me." After suffering a small loss, Galactus did not continue to attack, but watched Li Feng and spoke slowly. Galactus is now really interested in Li Feng. After all, such an interesting life is rare. It can't be killed, it can't be smashed, and its vitality is too tyrannical. What's more exaggerated is the speed of strengthening. It seems that every time Li Feng is hit, Li Feng will be several times stronger than before. It was the first time Galactus had seen this kind of existence, so it was inevitable that he would be a little curious. "You are also very strong, worthy of being one of the 5 great gods." Li Feng also sighed sincerely, a little amazed at the strength of Galactus. It wasn't until today, after fighting against Galactus, that Li Feng realized that he was a little arrogant before. I thought I could walk sideways in the Marvel world with the template of Steppenwolf, but in fact the water in the Marvel world is terribly deep. The god of symbiosis is indeed perverted, but it also needs to be developed. With Li Feng's attitude of fishing every day, in fact, he didn't develop much at all. This is also the fundamental reason why Li Feng had difficulty contending against Galactus at the beginning. It's not that the template of the god of symbiosis is not strong, but that Li Feng is too salty. Without a strong opponent, how can genes become stronger? But even so, Li Feng still relied on the template of the god of symbiosis, not only survived the battle with Galactus, but also completed many evolutions at a high speed. Up to now, it has been able to barely draw a tie with the current Galactus. Many people will think that Galactus is nothing more than that because of Galactus's embarrassing record. But in fact, Galactus' strength is particularly strong, exaggerated. Thanos of the Infinity Gauntlet was hung with a hammer by Galactus in his prime, which shows the strength of Galactus. Infinity Gauntlet can destroy half of the universe with a snap of fingers, but this is still no match for Galactus. To be precise, it is not the opponent of the 5 great gods. Li Feng can rely on his own strength to compete with Galactus for this sake, which is already very remarkable. Well, how about we make a deal? As long as you can withstand my final blow, I will spare your home planet and never use your home planet as food. Finally, Galactus put forward a condition, and Li Feng nodded without thinking. Galactus put forward this condition, which has essentially let the Earth go by default. After all, Galactus has seen how difficult Li Feng is, and he doesn't think he can kill Li Feng with one blow. In fact, the best way to deal with the god of symbiotes is to avoid fighting with him for a long time and banish him. Dealing with Li Feng is the same. Fighting Li Feng to the death is something a fool would do, and exiling Li Feng to the unknown world is the most appropriate way to deal with it. Li Feng also understood this weakness of his own, and had already thought of countermeasures in his heart. After defeating Galactus, Li Feng went back and asked Sorcerer Supreme to teach him to control the time gem, open the space channel, and travel around. At that time, even if he is exiled to an unknown space, Li Feng can come back easily. This is actually a kind of plan ahead, clearing up the weaknesses of 990 in advance. Seeing that Li Feng agreed to his promise, Galactus stopped hesitation, and his 2 huge amounts of pupils burst out with endless brilliance. Then, a burst of cosmic energy comparable to a gamma-ray burst spewed out from Galactus' mouth, heading directly towards Li Feng. Li Feng didn't sit still and waited to die, his pupils also shone with a terrifying light. The next moment, an equally terrifying cosmic energy ray spit out from Li Feng's mouth. This move was also a move that was automatically copied by the Doomsday Template after Li Feng suffered the attack of Galactus. It is powerful enough to easily penetrate an entire galaxy. The cosmic rays emitted by Li Feng and Galactus, after destroying many planets respectively, ruthlessly collided together. Then, a terrifying roar comparable to the Big Bang sounded. Galactus was the first to squelch whatever might happen before the aftermath of the horrific explosion destroyed nearby planets. Soon, the world became cold and dead again. At this time, Galactus looked at Li Feng with a little more approval in his eyes. Only the strong deserve the respect of the strong. Li Feng was like this, forcibly using his own strength to subdue one of the 5 great gods. Symbiont, I will spare your home planet. Galactus didn't intend to renege on his debt, so he simply stopped. Chapter 83 God and #039. S Miracle Open Black Lens Bracket. Please subscribe, close black lens bracket. This made Li Feng breathe a sigh of relief. Although the process was a bit difficult, fortunately the ending was acceptable to Li Feng. Not only under the high pressure of Galactus, he quickly improved his strength. At the same time, it also succeeded in making Galactus dispel the idea of swallowing the Earth, and Li Feng's goal was fully achieved. In fact, what Li Feng didn't know was that the reason why Galactus let go of the Earth was because he didn't want to waste his own energy. As a representative of perennial hunger, the underfed Galactus. His energy is very precious, and the only way to replenish it is to eat planets. It is also because of this that it is very normal for Galactus to give up when the gain is not proportional to the effort. After all, what planet to eat is the same, why bother with the Earth? What's more, Li Feng's performance really surprised Galactus. Li Feng, who is getting stronger and stronger, has been regarded as an existence on the same level as a certain monster, and Galactus naturally does not want to provoke him. Otherwise, if Li Feng is attracted to take revenge in the future, life for Galactus will also be very difficult. Let's go, I won't attack your home planet anymore, and I should go find new food. Galactus said to Li Feng in a deep voice, and resumed his mechanically cold tone. Li Feng didn't plan to stay any longer, and could evacuate as soon as his goal was achieved. I don't know how much time was delayed on this trip, but I hope I can make it back in time to make dinner for Hela. After saying hello, Li Feng returned the same way and flew out of the black hole smoothly. The capture limit of a black hole is the speed of light. As long as you have a speed exceeding light, you can escape the scope of the black hole. Now Li Feng's speed, if it is fully exerted in space, it will not be a problem to exceed the speed of light. It is easy to get rid of the huge gravity of the black hole. What's more, Time Gem also allows him to easily deal with the pressure of the black hole. After spotting the blue planet, Li Feng accelerated to go there. As for Galactus, after Li Feng left, he manipulated the entire black hole to start turning, leaving the scope of the solar system in a very short time. A disaster that might wipe out the Earth was directly resolved without anyone knowing. On Earth, S.H.I.E.L.D. After watching the black field symbolizing the black hole disappear on the screen, countless researchers were stunned, and they didn't come back to their senses for a long time. After a long time, the huge amounts of cheers almost knocked the roof off. Everyone is venting the despair of the past few days. At the same time, everyone began to celebrate regardless of demeanor, celebrating that human beings and even the Earth have escaped a catastrophe. After venting their emotions to their heart's content, the researchers also asked a question. How could such a large black hole disappear inexplicably? God's miracle. Or is the previous black hole just an oolong? Everyone has similar doubts in their hearts, because this crisis dissipated inexplicably. But soon, the researchers pressed this question to the bottom of their hearts and began to send various reports. They have survived the catastrophe, and there are still many people on the Earth who are still waiting to die in despair. It's time to tell the world, God bless the Earth. The United States, Office of the President. On the Oval Conference table, the President was holding his head, listening to the reports of the people below in despair. Different from the usual political talks, some of the people sitting at the Oval Conference table this time are from the military. Mr. President, the nuclear bombs, hydrogen bombs, and even neutron bombs in our base are ready to be launched into the air at any time. Mr. President, the aviation missiles at our base are also ready, let's issue an order. Let us use the ultimate weapon of mankind to personally send the final salute to the end of our mankind. A military boss whose military rank is at least at the level of Lieutenant General said to Mr. President in a tone of generosity to die. All their firepower has been prepared, only need an order from Mr. President, countless weapons will be launched into space, kicking off the prelude to the extinction of mankind. Not just the United States, but other countries as well. When facing the black hole, the ultimate celestial body in the universe, human beings are really too small. Unless they can push the Earth to run away, they will inevitably go extinct. I see, but please wait. The President of the United States knows more than anyone in the military, and he knows that the black hole is currently stopped strangely. So he decided to wait, maybe there will be a turning point. Although he himself knew in his heart that this possibility was very slim. But at this moment, the door of the meeting room was pushed open, and the confidant minister broke in rudely and impolitely again. Good news, Mr. President, the black hole is gone, and our crisis is over. The confidant minister was too anxious to hurry and almost ran all the way here, so he was a little out of breath when speaking. But everyone here listened to his report seriously, unwilling to miss a single word. After hearing the news in its entirety, there was a huge amount of excitement in everyone's heart. It's an afterlife feeling. But soon, some people came to their senses. Is this news true? It can't be nonsense. It can't be playing tricks on us, right? It can be seen that sometimes the ups and downs come too fast, and it is easy to change your mentality. Mr. President stood up from his seat at a speed that didn't fit the old man in his 70s, and quickly came to the confidant minister and snatched the report materials from the staff. After confirming that the report was absolutely true, the old man in his 70s couldn't help crying with joy. This is a kind of redemption from hell to heaven. In S.H.I.E.L.D., after receiving the news from the Military Aviation Department for the first time, Nick Fury's black pot-like face did not change at all. After turning around, Nick Fury realized that everyone present was looking at him with helpless eyes. "Sir, what's going on? What's the matter?" Someone couldn't help being impatient, and asked Nick Fury actively. Even those superheroes, at the moment staring at the report card in Nick Fury's hand. Tony Stark even had the urge to let Jarvis hack into the system, just to see what the current situation is like. After taking a deep breath and forcing himself to calm down and maintain his character, Nick Fury finally spoke. Nick Fury said slowly in a calm, pretentious tone, "The latest news is that the military has detected that the black hole has disappeared. Humanity has once again struggled from the death line." Although Nick Fury tried very hard to maintain his aloof personality, the corner of his mouth still betrayed him. God knows, when he confirmed the good news just now, how much willpower he used to suppress his heart that wanted to jump up and revel. Chapter 84 Responses from all parties. Open black lens bracket. Please subscribe. Close black lens bracket. But what puzzled Nick Fury was why everyone froze after he said the good news. The so-called blood is from the bottom to the top. The so-called redemption is from despair to hope. At this moment, all those who learned that the black hole disappeared and the Earth was safe couldn't suppress their inner excitement, and vented their inner emotions to their heart's content. God knows how desperate and helpless they are when facing a black hole. Fortunately, all of this is over, and that damned black hole has also disappeared. The whole world fell into a sea of ecstasy, and countless people who knew the truth announced on Twitter that God bless the Earth. But after the carnival, everyone had to face an embarrassing problem. That is, how exactly do black holes disappear? When people woke up from the carnival, they began to think about this question. Some people think that the whole thing is a big oolong, that God made a big joke on mankind. There is no such thing as a black hole, just a major mistake by NASA. Otherwise, it is impossible to explain the sudden appearance and disappearance of black holes. Some people also think that there must be a certain superhero who guards the safety of the Earth at 510 in a place unknown to human beings. But as soon as this guess came out, it was met with countless ridicules. That's a black hole. What kind of superhero can repel a black hole? Even if the legendary God descended in person, he would not be able to do this. In fact, there is really a God in the Marvel world, and there is also an angel. In the very early days, God led the angels under his command to spread his orthodoxy on the earth. Then, God met a tyrannical war madman. It was directly sealed in another world, which is the first world above the 9 realms. And the guy who sealed God and a group of angels is named Odin. Odin is still very strong, it's just that he has shot less and less recently. Having said that, when many human beings are looking for the reason for the disappearance of black holes. Top of the Himalayas, Kamar Taj. Ancient One stood with his hands behind his back, looking to the west with relief in his eyes. Unlike humans, who knew nothing, the Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One knew who shot back Galactus. She was satisfied, and finally Li Feng made his own choice and became a hero behind the scenes. This is very similar to Guahbg Yi, she is such a person herself. When other superheroes save a disaster, they can't wait to make it known to everyone in the world. But Ancient One is different. She has silently guarded the Earth for thousands of years and repelled countless hidden enemies. But the deeds of Ancient One are rarely known. Even in Kamar Taj, few people know how many times Ancient One has repelled the enemies who invaded the Earth. Li Feng's approach is very similar to that of Ancient One, both of which are the ones that hide their reputation deeply. This made Ancient One naturally feel close to Li Feng. Unfortunately, Li Feng is not destined to be her successor and cannot become the second Sorcerer Supreme. However, with the strength shown by Li Feng, there is no need to become the second Sorcerer Supreme. What Ancient One didn't know was that Li Feng chose to strike back Galactus, not because he was moved by being a hero, nor because of those idiots on Earth. It's just that I don't want to change places to live. Besides, Li Feng still has so many industries on Earth, so he is reluctant. When humans speculated about the truth behind the black hole incident, Asgard was on the throne of the God King. Odin has learned that Galactus has been repulsed. Odin was not surprised by the news. Galactus' strength fluctuates too much, it depends entirely on his own state. When it was strong, Galactus was unstoppable, and when it was weak, Galactus lost the face of the five gods. Odin himself is sure that he can repel Galactus in a state of extreme weakness. What Odin is really thinking about is, who shot Galactus back? Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One? Quite possibly. The great magician who guarded Midgard for thousands of years, even Odin would be in awe. Wyshandi, the god of the Trinity, does not exclude them either. As the source of white magic possessed by Ancient One, Visandi's strength is still very strong. And it is very mysterious, only knowing that it lives in seclusion on the earth, and rarely makes a move. Even Odin doesn't know the true strength of the Visandi, only that they do exist. As for Hela, Odin finds it impossible. Hela's character Odin understands that it is impossible to fight Galactus for the earth. So after much deliberation, Odin found that the one who was most likely to repel Galactus was that the Supreme Quencher hadn't escaped. So far, the influence of Galactus has come to an end, and Odin has not been entangled in this matter for too long. Compared with Galactus, it is Hela who really deserves Odin's attention. As the eldest daughter of Odin, Hela's strength and potential are beyond doubt. As long as you stand on the land of Asgard, your strength can be infinitely enhanced. With this alone, Hela's potential surpasses that of Odin. Therefore, Ding always treats his eldest daughter as a serious problem. Most importantly, Odin understands that his time is running out. Hela's matter must be dealt with as soon as possible, so as to lay a solid foundation for the next God King to ascend the throne. When he was young, he fought too vigorously, and suffered from hidden wounds all over his body. Now that his life was coming to an end, it was time to consider finding an heir for himself. Originally, Hela was the best candidate for heir, but unfortunately, she was raised in a wrong way. Except for Hela, there is only Thor left. Loki is impossible, not to mention Loki's bloodline, just Loki's potential locks the possibility of Loki becoming a God King. The God King must be the strongest in Asgard, this cannot be shaken. With Loki's strength, it is quite appropriate to assist the God King, and it is fine to become the God King. Thor, Odin's head hurts just thinking about him. Odin has seen all of Thor's recent actions on Earth. This Erha-like son, like his daughter Hela, likes mortals. This family is unfortunate. Every time he thinks of this, Odin feels sad in his heart. He is the majestic king of the 9 realms, who has traveled across the universe for so many years and gained a great reputation. As a result, in his later years, he couldn't even find a qualified heir. Hela has a personality problem and is too bloodthirsty. Thor is a dude again, let go. Let Thor go to the earth, but Thor is so happy that he doesn't want to go back, and he doesn't want to come back. If it wasn't for his failing health, Odin would even have the urge to work harder and raise a trumpet with Frigga. Hela's matter can't be delayed any longer, it must be resolved. As for Thor, I hope he can grow up and become a real Kanda. Chapter 85 Odin and #039. S disappointment open black lens bracket please subscribe, close black lens bracket. Odin sighed thinking, looking back on his life, that for the first time he regretted certain things he did when he was young. If I could have cared a little more for myself back then, maybe Hela wouldn't be what it is now. The White Queen recently discovered a problem. It's just that Li Feng looks at her more and more strangely recently. If I have to describe it, it is probably the kind of eyes that look at strangers but are very kind. Even sometimes at night, Li Feng would be inexplicably hyperactive, and she couldn't sleep all night because of the constant tossing. By the way, Li Feng's body is getting stronger and stronger now, and the White Queen gradually feels that she can't bear it anymore. All the signs made the White Emperor understand one thing: Li Feng seemed to be aware of the existence of another soul in her body. Definitely, this is just White Queen's guess, she is not sure because there is no direct evidence. But it also gave White Queen a sense of urgency, and she realized that maybe the showdown might be near. In fact, the White Queen's guess was not wrong, Li Feng did know her true identity. But there is no other idea, whether it is the mutant White Queen or the Asgard goddess of death Hela, they are all his wives. Even after knowing the existence of Hela, Li Feng's interest in some aspects is even higher. When he thinks that not only the White Queen, but also a goddess and demon king who once conquered the 9 realms is on the bed, Li Feng will always feel a sense of satisfaction in his heart. To put it bluntly, it is the vanity of men. Who doesn't want to have 2 wives? Hey. Just like many men fantasize about sharing the same bed with big stars. In fact, there are many girls whose appearance is comparable to that of a big star, but the aura of a big star is too dazzling. The same is true for Hela. The halo of the great demon king gave Ji Fengxian a sense of accomplishment. So what about such a ruthless big devil, isn't he already his wife? At the moment, it has been more than a month since Li Feng defeated Galactus last time. During this period of time, Li Feng and Hela's life was very peaceful, and no one came to disturb them. And Li Feng also successfully put Breaking Bad on the screen. Since this belongs to the category of TV dramas, although the system is generous and rewards are given every episode, these rewards are so tasteless that they cannot be described in words. According to Li Feng's guess, it is estimated that when the God of Symbiosis template was drawn last time, too much European energy was overdrawn. Congratulations to the host for the successful release of the first episode of Breaking Bad, and a reward of SpongeBob SquarePants, Crab Boss's Secret Hamburger. Congratulations to the host for the successful release of the second episode of Breaking Bad, and reward a bell for Pleasant Goat and Big Wolf. Congratulations to the host for successfully releasing the third episode of Breaking Bad, and rewarding Cardcaptor Sakura for the second time. Successful release, reward address from Balala Little Demon Fairy. The screening is successful, and I will be rewarded with a super rare fruit plate of Fruit Treasure Special Attack. There are so many other wonderful rewards like this, it's hard to describe. However, it is worth mentioning that after Li Feng released the entire first season of Breaking Bad, he received a rather strange reward. Congratulations to the host for getting Gojo Satoru's Domain Expansion X1 from Spell Return Battle. Gojo Satoru, the field expands. It took Li Feng a while to recover from this reward. Although he knows that Gojo Satoru is definitely the strongest echelon in the entire Spell Return, but what use will his domain development be in the Marvel Universe? Is it possible? Li Feng wants to use him to become a ghost catcher. The Marvel Universe isn't ghostly either. Definitely, after seeing the power of the field expansion, Li Feng is still delighted by it. After the next battle, he must try such a good thing. Definitely, apart from this reward that made Li Feng feel a little better, the other system rewards over time made Li Feng even start to wonder if he had changed. Or is it that his looks are too much affecting his European spirit? It is said that good looks are not very lucky. Li Feng thinks this may be true. Apart from the unsatisfactory system rewards, Li Feng is still very satisfied in other aspects. The world is finally clean, and no one will bother me anymore. S.H.I.E.L.D. has learned to behave well, and did not bother Li Feng and his wife again. This is also normal. It's really S.H.I.E.L.D. stupid to insist on getting along when you know you can't afford it. No matter how arrogant Nick Fury was, after being threatened with death by Hela before, he couldn't be mad anymore. Black Pork has no doubts, if he dares to speak ill of Hela again, Hela will dare to stab him to death with a sword. 0. Ask for flowers. Let alone mutant, Li Feng was completely afraid of being killed. Although some mutants are now clamoring for revenge for the great leader Magneto, most mutants don't even know who killed Magneto. As for those superheroes who are beginning to show their talents, Li Feng is also concerned. But as long as those superheroes don't cause trouble for Li Feng won't take a second look either. If anything, Li Feng feels like a traveler in this world. He watched everything that happened in this world with cold eyes, and rarely intervened. Only when he is with the White Queen does Li Feng feel like he has a home in this world too. At the moment, White Queen, who was taking care of her mother in the hospital, was suddenly taken aback, and her eyes suddenly turned emerald green. Next second, the scene around her began to change and flow, like a waterfall. In just 10 seconds, the person who took over the White Queen's body appeared on the familiar land of Asgard. Here, it was still as beautiful as she remembered. Hela looked around in a daze, not understanding why she came here suddenly. Before Hela could figure it out, a figure appeared in front of Hela. Wearing armor and holding a spear, the God Throne Worker. The God King Odin who appeared in front of Hela was almost exactly the same as Hela remembered. Still so cold, still so arrogant. The so-called meeting of enemies makes one extremely jealous. If you want to ask who is the person Hela hates the most, it must be Odin. After seeing the figure standing in front of her clearly, Hela directly drew out the night sky sword and punched towards Odin. Now Hela only has one idea in mind, to kill the man in front of him. Even if this man is her biological father. Seeing Hela rushing towards him, some disappointment flashed in Odin's eyes. After such a long time, Hela has not changed her impulsive temperament. Still the same as before, cold, cruel, and realistic. Odin, who originally had other ideas, was completely disappointed after seeing Hela like this. It seems that these days when you were sealed, you still haven't learned to repent. Chapter 86 Not an easy thing. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe, close black lens bracket. Odin's body was full of divine light, and the kindness in his eyes gradually disappeared. He shook his head and sighed. Hela's reaction and performance made him very disappointed. Even though Odin is Hela's father, he can't hide his disappointment. However, Hela obviously had no intention of reminiscing with Odin. Her enchanting figure was instantly surrounded by green light, and the night sky sword in her hand was radiant, wrapped in huge amounts of the power of death, and passed through the station mercilessly. Odin's body remained motionless. But what Hela didn't expect was that Odin's body seemed to have no sense of reality. After being pierced by the night sky sword, it blurred, and then solidified quickly, just like a ripple on the calm sea, full of no substance damage. This is not Odin himself, just a phantom. Hela also understood this truth, and quickly calmed down, but in those beautiful emerald green eyes, there was a monstrous murderous intent of 087. Seeing this scene, Odin couldn't help frowning. He is a god, but also a father. How can a father not understand his daughter? Judging from Hela's performance, there is absolutely no possibility of reconciliation at all. This undoubtedly gave Odin a headache. While having a headache, I was more disappointed. Hela, my daughter, you have lost your true nature as a god of death. You and those lower creatures have become one. You like this are not qualified to be the heir to the temple of the gods. Odin shook his head and said with a sigh. If Hela hadn't been so deep and bloodthirsty when he fought in the 9 realms back then, so many things wouldn't have happened in the future. It's a pity that not only there is no medicine for regret in the world, but there is also no medicine in the gods. After hearing Odin's disappointing words, Hela only had a sneer on her face. Who did she become like this? Death goddess Hela, who cultivated it? Has this guy Odin really forgotten? Creating a god of death is not an easy task. Since you imprisoned me, you are no longer my father. I never feel that there is anything wrong with being a flesh and blood person on earth. I feel love from a person on earth that I have never felt before, and I am willing to sacrifice everything for it. But listen, Odin, sooner or later I will sit on the throne of Asgard, and sooner or later I will prove your foolishness. Hela's tone was cold, but every word was like a needle, extremely tenacious. Hearing this, Odin stood there silent for a few seconds, then moved the scepter in his hands, and sighed. Forget it, it seems that we have nothing to talk about today, let's wait until you calm down. After speaking, Odin disappeared, and the surrounding environment also shattered. 2 seconds later, White Queen suddenly opened her eyes, only to realize that she had been sitting in the same position at all, not going anywhere. Recalling the conversation with Odin just now, the White Queen also had some doubts in her eyes. Is it a dream? Or a hallucination? That's my father. Your father. White Queen heard another voice in her heart responding to herself, and couldn't help being stunned for a moment before realizing that Hela once mentioned to herself that Odin is the god of the 9 worlds and has strong magical power. Creating an illusion is not difficult for this god at all. Emma, you don't have to be afraid, I will protect you and our husband. Okay, I believe you, Sister Hela. White Queen smiled lightly, like a blooming rose. At the same time, Asgard. Odin took a deep breath and closed his eyes wearily. Just now, he used Gungnir's divine power to construct a real illusion. And in that fantasy world, Odin and Hela met. As expected, Hela is still the same as usual, wishing him to die. The first reaction after seeing him was to kill him. For a father, this is actually not an easy thing to accept. Thinking of this, Odin's heart throbbed slightly. My daughter regards herself as an enemy, I will kill myself every time I meet. But who can blame this? At the beginning, he made the decision on his own, insisting on taking Hela to fight in the 9 realms, which made her more and more ambitious. In other words, 99% of the reason why Hela was able to grow to this state was that Odin cultivated it himself. And the reason why Odin met Hela this time was mainly to see if Hela still has the bloody zero. Or rather, see if Hela has changed. If Hela can see past hatred and become a virtuous woman, then Odin may consider handing over the position of God King to Hela. After all, Hela also began to have her own lover, and learn to love and be loved. Theoretically speaking, the personality will change more or less. Although the reason why the 9 realms have been able to stabilize for so long is because of the strength of Asgard, but under this strength, many darkness derived from violence have also been born. The 9 realms need a sage, and more importantly, a ruler with strong strength and compassion, so that the group can continue to be stable. It's just a pity that it ended up hitting Odin hard in the face. Hela didn't change at all, nor did she let go of her hatred for him. Her first reaction was to want him to die. The bloodiness is still there and has never waned. Odin's idea of handing over the position of God King to Hela also completely dissipated. Such a Hela, who cannot let go of the hatred of the past, is not suitable to be a God King. So, why did Odin suddenly think of Hela? In fact, a large part of the reason is because of Thor. The child who never grows up. If Thor is mature enough and good enough, why would Odin think of Hela? The main reason is that Thor's recent performance has also made Odin extremely hopeful. In fact, what Thor did on the earth was seen by Odin with his divine power. In Odin's view, Thor is even more unsuitable to be the god of Asgard who rules the 9 realms. Thor is only suitable for synthesis as a hero, or the bravest warrior on the battlefield. As for ruling the 9 realms, Thor may not only be incompetent, but may even destroy Asgard's family business that has been laid for tens of thousands of years. Look what good things Thor has been doing on Earth lately. Not only became friends with a mortal, but also fell in love with a mortal. It even joined a lower biological organization called Avengers. This decision was made after a couple of casual flicks by a big man who looked like a bear. Who is Thor? Thor with Mjolnir. Just throwing away Thor's identity to work for some Avengers, how can such a person be the Lord of the 9 realms? Chapter 87. You have to pay the price. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe, close black lens bracket. Thor, if you don't grow up, the end of Asgard will come. Single quote. Odin looked at the ceiling above his head, and there was a touch of late fatigue in his eyes full of charm. As for the Avengers on Earth, it has now reached a good point. The reason for this is inseparable from Li Feng. During the previous black hole crisis, Taking advantage of the opportunity of bringing together superheroes, Nick Fury successfully completed the formation of Avengers. If Li Feng chose to join the Avengers at that time, Nick Fury would not have this opportunity. After all, it was Li Feng who sent Galactus away. Today's Avengers has many members and is much stronger than the Avengers in the original Marvel Universe. Although it is still far from the situation in Avengers 4, 4 superheroes, the Fantastic Four, have been added. Thor also managed to find his own sense of belonging through many experiences and deceptions, and joined this organization. But the trouble is, although the Avengers Team 07 was established, they did not suffer from any setbacks. After Galactus left, they resumed their individuality. Especially Thor, since getting acquainted with Tony Stark, the famous son of Marvel, the two have basically been inseparable from Shadow. These two superheroes who would fight in the original plot, after a few bottles of wine, the inexplicable stink became congenial. The two not only went to bars and entertainment venues everywhere, but even took the female stars home to sleep every day. The girls changed every day, and their desires were free. It was Thor's performance on Earth that made Odin waver in his decision-making. He began to worry about what would happen to Asgard led by Thor if he died. It was precisely because of this incident that Odin had the idea of reconsidering Hela. It's just that Hela also successfully interrupted his thoughts, and she didn't hide her hatred for him. A son with a good relationship is not suitable to be an heir, and a daughter who is suitable to be an heir has a particularly bad relationship. This is the situation Odin is facing, unable to choose a satisfactory successor, only to choose a relatively less bad successor. In addition to meeting Hela and learning about her current situation, Odin has not forgotten Li Feng, a lowly creature who dared to offend the gods. This damn guy actually slept with his Odin daughter, how could he let him go so easily? Li Feng must pay the price for tarnishing the noble lineage of the Asgard family. That was Odin's first thought. Therefore, after ending the illusion with Hela, Odin reconstructed another illusion. But this time Odin in the illusion is no longer a phantom, but a soul with powerful divine power. In the illusion, the meeting this time was on a seaside cliff. Li Feng, who appeared here at the moment, was at a loss. He clearly remembered that he was constructing the plot of the second season of Breaking Bad, in the living room at home. How did you come here in the blink of an eye? Just when Li Feng was puzzled, Odin appeared. Holding the eternal Gungnir, standing on the top of the cloud, looking down on Li Feng, surrounded by thunder and dark clouds. Bold mortal. Dare to tarnish the noble blood of Asgard and deserve death. I pronounce sentence in the name of the king of God Odin, damn you. Kneel down. If Odin is guilty and regretful when facing Hela, then when facing Li Feng, there is only bloody killing intent left. Thinking of his daughter being put to sleep by a mortal, Odin was not angry and arrogant. Hearing the roar, Li Feng couldn't help being taken aback for a moment, and only then did he realize what was going on. As for Odin's killing intent, Li Feng didn't care at all. Even Galactus has faced it, how can he be afraid? It's just that the appearance of Odin also reminded Li Feng. That is, although he is very strong now, he still has obvious weaknesses. The weakest point is that he has never fought against such gods that exist in the 9 realms, and he does not understand their fighting methods. It's easy to lose out in the battle, or put yourself in danger. As for the god of symbiosis, although he has the characteristics of genetic mutation, the premise of that is to be beaten, which is hard to say. So Li Feng was thinking, if he fights Odin later, what method will he use? Since Odin can easily lead him through this illusion, then. While Li Feng was thinking about it, Odin was about to explode. Good fellow, you not only slept with my daughter and stained my blood of Asgard, but you dare to ignore me. Wicked beast, never forgive. Under Odin's wrath, terrible thunder gathered behind Odin. In the end, a huge spear composed of thunderbolts was formed, like a giant blade falling from the sky, so terrifying. With a roar, Odin burst into holy voices, raised his hand and pointed at Li Feng. The lightning spear stabbed towards Li Feng. This blow, let alone one, even if it hits such a strong person, he will die directly. Although Odin has not shot for a long time, it does not mean that he has become weaker. Although in this illusion, it is not Odin's real body and cannot completely kill Li Feng, but it is still no problem to erase Li Feng's soul with the soul body. At that time, Li Feng, who has no soul, can only become a living dead man. 397 Ever since he learned that Hela had been put to sleep by a mortal, the anger in his nose has never subsided. He thought about killing that damned mortal all the time. And now, he finally found the opportunity. As for Li Feng's innocence, Odin doesn't care. In his life, he traversed the universe, conquered the 9 realms, and killed countless innocent people. Now it is just one more innocent person, and he is not wronged at all. Seeing the divine spear attacking him like a thunderbolt, and Odin's obvious killing intent, Li Feng's eyes also turned cold. After learning of Hela's identity, Li Feng even thought about reconciling the relationship between Odin and Hela. But now it seems that there is no need for this. Since you have killing intent towards yourself, then you should die. Li Feng will not tolerate what this old guy does just because Odin is Hela's father. And, maybe Hela wants to kill Odin more than Li Feng does. Odin above the clouds frowned at the indifferent Li Feng. Something is wrong with this situation. Logically speaking, shouldn't Li Feng be terrified under his divine power? What's the matter with being so calm? Odin vaguely felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell exactly what was wrong. Chapter 88 The field expands, and there is no limit to space. Please subscribe. Close black lens bracket. But it doesn't matter, this mortal is dying anyway. Just when the spear turned into thunder was about to hit Li Feng clenched his fist, his whole body was covered with silver light, and then punched the attacking thunder spear. Unimaginable terrifying power burst out from Li Feng's body in an instant, and the terrifying power even made this fantasy world show signs of collapse. The divine spear formed by the thunderbolts directly hit Li Feng's fist. Then, the divine spear collapsed directly, and countless thunderbolts were also directly extinguished. In the face of absolute power, all magic looks fancy. One punch can break all spells. Odin obviously didn't expect this ending. At the moment he was still staring blankly at the smashed thunder. After fighting for so many years, it is not that Odin has never encountered a strong person. When facing the ancient god group, Odin was almost besieged to death. But there are so many strong people, but none is more special than Ji Feng. Li Feng didn't have those fancy tricks, only seeing the ultimate power. Under that punch, Odin's divine power was like a joke. Let you be unparalleled in thunder, and I will break it with one punch. This simple and rude attack method produced a great contrast with the effect it caused. So much so that Odin felt unreal. What shocked Odin even more was the strength displayed by Li Feng. Isn't this guy immortal? Shouldn't he just let himself rub against the ground like an ant? What the hell is suddenly becoming so strong? Is this still a human being? Odin, at this moment, was completely bewildered. But Odin was stunned, Li Feng was not. After smashing the thunder spear, Li Feng didn't stop his actions. Instead, it flew directly from the ground and rushed towards Odin. Li Feng is not a saint. It is impossible not to fight back when you are beaten. Since Odin wants to attack himself regardless of his feelings, Li Feng must teach him a profound lesson. Although in the fantasy world, Odin cannot be harmed originally, but suppression is not necessarily impossible. By the time Odin came back to his senses, it was too late. Because Li Feng had already appeared in front of him, he could only watch with his one eye. Li Feng's palm was getting bigger and bigger. Snapped. Li Feng slammed a punch at Odin's god shadow, and with huge amounts of force, he was knocked away for a distance. As for Odin, trembling with anger, he looked at Li Feng in disbelief. Odin, who had already ascended to the throne of God King, was desecrated his authority for the first time in so many years. Although this was only in the illusion, what Li Feng hit was not his body, but an illusion, a touch of his soul. This is more than committing an offense against others, it is trampling his dignity under his feet. Then, I spit 2 mouthfuls of saliva on it. It's a shame on Asgard. After realizing this, Odin trembled with anger, Since he was born until now, no one has dared to do this to him. Odin really wanted to say a few harsh words to maintain his authority, but unfortunately, Li Feng's next action made his pupils shrink severely. I saw Li Feng suddenly squeezed out a sword finger, and with the silver light flashing on his body, he roared softly word by word. Buzz buzz. All around this fantasy world created by Odin, completely shattered. Instead, there is an endless hell. Boundless space. The corners of Li Feng's mouth turned up, his whole body was surrounded by scarlet, and countless small dark red balls floated all over his body. The field expands. This is the expansion of the field. Li Feng's expression went crazy, and his heart kept beating wildly. He felt that he could change everything around him. What kind of power is this? Why have I never seen it? Odin's face was full of disbelief, and when he was about to wave the scepter, he suddenly saw Li Feng pointing a finger at him. Odin, are you curious what this is? This is my field. As long as I want, I can imbue all creatures in the realm with everything I create, including death. Quote. After saying that, Li Feng closed his eyes lightly and pressed his finger suddenly. Scatter. Click. Odin's illusory body began to shatter and shatter, turning into powder like glass. In the end, Odin could only watch Li Feng helplessly, unable to say anything. So far, the first meeting between Li Feng and Odin has come to an end. In the manner, Li Feng was panting slightly, and suddenly opened his eyes, and everything was back to normal. He looked at his hands with joy. This feeling is simply too cool. Honey, what's the matter with you? The White Queen's voice suddenly came at this moment. As early as when Li Feng was pulled into the illusion, the White Queen sensed something was wrong, so she used Hela's divine power to shuttle back to the villa immediately. This is actually not surprising. Hela knew clearly that since Odin could find herself, then Li Feng must have been exposed as well. So she immediately guessed that Odin should attack Li Feng. It has to be said that this really made both Hela and White Queen very anxious, and she couldn't even imagine what she would do if something happened to Li Feng. She even planned to kill everyone in Asgard to avenge Li Feng. Fortunately, Li Feng woke up in time, and was not succeeded by Odin. But even so, looking at Li Feng who woke up, Wanla who took over the White Queen's body still hugged him immediately. Great, you're awake. Hela even had the urge to cry, she almost thought that she would lose Li Feng forever. This kind of joy of losing and regaining made Hela completely unable to hold back her aloof personality. Li Feng also patted Hela on the back, comforting him softly. To be honest, Li Feng was a little moved in his heart. Someone can worry about you wholeheartedly, rejoice and cry for you, he has never felt Li Nojiao before. Li Feng is a very rational person, and his judgment is basically not influenced by emotions. But at this moment, he still felt 5 steps warm in his heart. I love you. All the feelings finally turned into these 3 characters. This is also the first time Hela has said this sentence since accepting Li Feng. Then, Hela, who was usually in an active state, hugged Li Feng and offered her everything. Li Feng wanted to say, me too, but Hela, who was enthusiastic and proactive, would keep all Li Feng's words in his mouth. Feelings are often like this, and many times they can't help themselves. Although Hela has lived for a long time, she is still blank in terms of feelings. Never experienced it, and was never told what to do. When she was young, the only thing she learned was how to kill efficiently. This also caused Hela to be at a loss sometimes when faced with Li Feng's initiative. Chapter 89 Asgard, Assemble, please subscribe, close black lens bracket. But today, Hela finally learned without a teacher, and took the initiative to express her feelings for Li Feng. Only after almost losing, will you understand the value of the person in front of you. Hela's completely let go of the initiative opened the door to a new world for Li Feng. A lot of knowledge that I didn't have the opportunity to use before, it seems that I can find an opportunity to practice it in the future. If we say that this crisis has made the relationship between Li Feng and Hela more stable. That, for Odin, just made him angrier inside. Originally Odin had an unforgivable killing intent towards Li Feng. He will never forgive a man who has sullied the noble blood of Asgard. When Li Feng punched him, when Li Feng trampled his pride under his feet, Odin's killing intent towards Li Feng was already so intense that it was basically irreconcilable. Despicable mortal, you will pay for what you have done. Odin, who has cultivated his body for hundreds of years, was successfully broken by Li Feng at this moment. He showed his true colors, and that vicious look didn't have the slightest kindness in people's impression. There is a fact that must be known. No matter how genial and affable Odin may appear in Thor, when he was young, he was a war madman. 267 is the executioner who has led countless genocides, the real battlefield butcher. Would such a person have a good temper? Who would believe it? It's just that after getting older, Odin restrained his brutality and revealed his hypocritical side. Hoped to lead by example and cultivate Thor and Loki well. But when he was completely irritated by Li Feng, that damn demeanor had already been thrown to an unknown corner by Odin. He really wants to start a war now, and lead the army of Asgard to rush to the earth to kill Li Feng. He did the same, calling Heimdall over immediately. In Heimdall's presence, Odin announced the mustering of Asgard's armies. The Nine Realms had forgotten the power of Asgard, and he felt it was necessary to remind the Nine Realms of the fear of being dominated by Asgard. Only this time, not even Heimdall agrees with Odin's order. Your Majesty, you must know that Asgard is no longer fit for a war. Heimdall said to Odin. Heimdall is right, the current Asgard is indeed not suitable for war. It's not fit, not lack of ability. Odin is old, Thor has not yet grown up. Starting a war at this time will only drag Asgard into the quagmire. Worse, doing so would make Thor a target. When Odin is completely dead, do you think Thor will be revenged by countless people? Once the seeds of hatred are planted, the fruits of hatred will surely be born. As an old man who has followed Odin for many years, Heimdall clearly understands this. So far in the universe, there are many former enemies of Asgard staring at them. Definitely, if it was just that, Heimdall wouldn't dare to say no to Odin. It was Frigga who really gave Heimdall the courage to refute Odin. He's right, Odin. You should really calm down now. Frigga also stood up at this time and stopped the impulsive behavior of leaving work. Odin has fallen out with Hela once, and if it happens again, Hela will never forgive Asgard for the rest of his life. A supposedly excellent heir will also become an enemy of Asgard. Frigg doesn't want to see this scene, because Frigg feels that Hela still has a chance to return to Asgard now. Are you going to stop me too? Frigga, my wife. Odin's expression now is like a lion of rage. That ferocious appearance seemed to be ready to tear the enemy to shreds at any time. Facing Odin in this state, even Heimdall felt huge amounts of pressure. Only Frigga has no fear at all. Yes, haven't you been worrying about not having a suitable heir? I think Hela is good, she has changed. Frigga persuaded Odin. She is a very gentle woman, but also a first witch with superb vision. She knows better than Odin that Thor is not the best candidate to be the God King's successor. Even if Thor is her own and Hela is not. She hasn't changed. Her first reaction when she saw me was to kill me. Do you think I should raise an heir who is ready to kill me at any moment? Although Odin is still angry now, he is somehow rational. It's just that Odin still didn't comment on Frigga's proposal. Hela changed. Hee. Doesn't it mean that as soon as you see yourself, you wish you could die? This is also called a change. She learned to protect, she no longer blindly pursues killing. She has her own lover, she is no longer an emotionless death god. You should look at your child more rationally, instead of staying in the past with her. Frigga persuaded again that she really didn't want to see Odin and Hela go to where they are today. And she is the queen of Asgard, she should choose a qualified heir for Asgard. Otherwise, Asgard will end badly in the future. After listening to Frigga's words, Odin's inner anger calmed down a bit. And began to think carefully about Frigga's words. If Hela has really changed as Frigga said, then Hela is indeed suitable to be his successor. Hela is powerful, ruthless and extremely capable of fighting, and can keep Asgard from being peeped at. At the same time, Hela is her eldest daughter, and the noble blood of the Odinson family flows in her body. From all aspects, Hela is the best candidate to become the successor of the God King. Except that Hela is too obsessed with killing and doesn't know how to restrain her edge. It is precisely for this reason that Odin did not regard Hela as his heir in the end. Because a God King who only knows how to kill is definitely a disaster for the 9 realms. But now, if Hela really learned how to guard as Frigg said. As the heir to the God King, Hela really has no shortcomings. However, when he thought that Hela had found a mortal as her husband, Odin would not be angry. Hela is the eldest princess of the Odinson family, and the most noble blood in the 9 realms flows in her body. How could such a Hela accept a mortal? Thor is a man after all, so Thor can barely accept a mortal as his girlfriend. After all, in this kind of matter, men always have to take advantage. Chapter 90 Admit It, It and #039, SA Showdown Open Black Lens Bracket Please subscribe, Close Black Lens Bracket. But Hela is a daughter, and her daughter has been raped, so it's no wonder Odin didn't blow his hair. Isn't the current series of events caused by Hela finding a mortal husband? If there was no such thing, the situation would not have become what it is now. If Hela wants to sit in the temple of the gods, she must kill that mortal and wash away the shame of Asgard. This is the only condition. If Hela can't do it, she will never be able to become the God King. Finally, Odin said so. Regardless of whether Odin really wants Hela to be a God King. But one thing is certain, that is Odin must let Li Feng die. This mortal who dared to tarnish his own Odinson bloodline, Odin would have to die of anger if he didn't die. As for letting Hela kill Li Feng, it was Odin's condition. He couldn't forgive Hela for his previous rebellion, which has always been a thorn in his heart. To calm him down, Hela had to do something. And killing Li Feng is very good. If Hela really does this, it can be regarded as a side proof that Hela has surrendered to him. Most importantly, for Hela to kill Li Feng, this is definitely a murderous approach. As for whether Hela will agree to this condition, Odin thinks the possibility is very high. Hela has a strong obsession with the position of God King, which Li Ding can be sure of. According to Odin's own understanding, if he tells Hela that she can become the God King by killing a designated person, then no matter who that person is, Hela will do it. That's the nature of Hela, and Odin knows Hela all too well. Just at the side, after hearing what Odin said, Frigga showed a wry smile. In fact, Frigga doesn't know whether Hela will kill Li Feng as Odin said. But there is one thing that Frigga can be sure of, if Hela really does what Li Ding said. Whether it is for Li Feng or Hela, it is a way of killing people. Hela has been alone for most of her life, walking with killing all the way, and finally found someone she really likes. Why did Odin have to be dismantled? Is the noble blood of Asgard really more important than Hela? For the first time, Frigga felt that Odin in front of her eyes was so strange. In the end, Frigga sighed. She knew that she couldn't change Odin's mind. After all, this was the matter of Odin's father and daughter, and she didn't bother to get involved. As for what Hela will choose in the end, she doesn't know, she can't guess. Earth. After a while of indulgence, Hela lay powerlessly on the bed, looking at Li Feng with resentful eyes. What a cow. The old woman's waist is almost broken. Even so, Hela's eyes are more like acting like a baby. Honey, I'm going to tell you something heavy. Hela suddenly said to Li Feng. Her expression became serious. Li Feng blinked and motioned for Hela to say yes. However, Li Feng guessed a little bit about what Hela was going to say. Perhaps, Hela is going to have a showdown with herself. In fact, this is indeed the case. Haigong has a complete showdown with Li Feng. By now, Hela also basically guessed that Li Feng already knew her identity. Maybe Li Feng still doesn't understand what she did before, but sooner or later she will know, won't she? Instead of letting Li Feng investigate later, it is better to confess on his own initiative. As for whether Li Feng is willing to accept her as a bad woman, Hela still has a little certainty in her heart. Her relationship with Li Feng is not fake, Hela firmly believes it. Actually, my identity is Asgard's goddess of death, Hela. At the beginning, I was imprisoned by my father in the dungeon of Asgard. In order to escape, I took my soul out of the divine body and came to the earth. But I was too weak at that time, so I had to enter Emma's body. But you can rest assured, my dear, that Emma and I are sisters, and we both love you very much. Hela admitted her identity and confessed everything. Then, Hela looked at Li Feng with a worried look, hoping to see Li Feng's attitude. Wow. I knew my wife was a goddess, but I didn't expect her to be the goddess of death. That's so cool. Are you satisfied with my reaction? Li Feng said to Hela in a funny tone, and then winked at Hela. Looking at Li Feng's ugly face, Hela has the urge to smash 10 times. At the same time, he also understood that Li Feng really knew his identity a long time ago. However, this is not the point is Hela's past. 0. Seeking flowers. Is Li Feng willing to accept a bad woman with blood on her hands? Hela didn't know what to do, although the possibility of Li Feng abandoning her because of her past was very small, but Hela was a little flustered. She was very afraid that she would lose this relationship because of the past. Finally, after taking a deep breath, Hela still told Li Feng about her past. She is still determined to confess and win Li Feng's leniency. It is always better to turn yourself in than to be found out by Li Feng. Li Feng didn't speak, but quietly listened to Hela's narration. I have to say that Li Feng was really shocked by Hela's past. In the movie, Hela appeared as the big devil, and he was so cool to the extreme, but he rarely said what Hela did. 0. It was only from Hela's mouth that Li Feng knew more about Hela's past. After listening to Hela's narration, Li Feng's first thought was that this woman is too wolf. Hela is an out-and-out massacre. She has single-handedly massacred a civilization more than once. To be honest, it is really difficult for Li Feng to combine the murderous Hela with the nervous Hela now. Besides, Hela is also a careerist. In order to become the God King of Asgard, she once rebelled. During the rebellion, Hela even wiped out Asgard's elite Valkyrie troops. A proper killer. However, Hela is more like a poor person. While her peers enjoy the love of her parents, Hela is already learning how to kill enemies better. While other girls are looking forward to beautiful love, Hela is already leading the army to wage war. It can be said that Odin has to bear a lot of responsibility for Hela to become what it is now. It was Odin who raised Hela to become the great demon king. Hela can even be said to be the younger version of Odin. In a sense, Hela is the most like Odin's children. After talking about her past, Hela didn't dare to look into Li Feng's eyes anymore, but lowered her head. She is very afraid now that Ji Feng will abandon her because of her past. But Li Feng will not do that, and it is impossible to do that. Regardless of Hela's past, one thing Li Feng can be sure of. That is, Hela is his wife, a human knife that belongs to him completely.